gavel. You know, our normal person wasn't here today. Can you grab the the gavel? Our normal person's sick today. We're kind of out of the. Okay.
I don't think there's any reason to wait. Joanne, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Okay. The City of San Clemente respects the many people of different faiths who reside here. The City Council historically begins its session with an invocation offered by one of the religious leaders of our community with full appreciation of our shared belief that we are one nation under God. And while the city cannot endorse any particular religion, we respect the religious freedom and freedom of expression of all our citizens to pray as they feel led to pray. This evening's invocation will be given by Don Kapoff, Orange County Sheriff Department Chaplain.
Welcome, Don. Appreciate your coming. Will you all please stand for the prayer and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be offered afterwards by Councilmember Schwartz.
Would you please pray with me? Father, today as we watch these children sing their songs of the holiday, we're reminded just how blessed we truly are. We thank you for all of our kids, all of our grandkids. They're such a blessing, and we know they come from you. We ask, Father, during this time of holidays that you keep all our families safe and healthy. You look over the city of San Clemente. You provide for us. You protect us, the people that serve the city, people that reside here. And we ask that your presence would be here tonight. You'd guide these proceedings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Donchak. Here. Councilmember Schwartz. Here. Councilmember Ward. Here. Mayor Brown. Here. And Mayor Pro Tem Ham is absent. First item on the agenda is a holiday serenade by the 5th and 6th grade choir students from Truman Benedict, Concordia, Las Palmas, Marblehead, Palisades, and Vista Del Mar elementary schools under the direction of choir directors Deborah Peterson and Craig Rennie.
I'm Debbie Peterson, and I'm the vocal music teacher here in San Clemente. I've taught 21 years here as part of the Capistrano Unified School District. And we have here our 5th graders from San Clemente here. Thank you, Mayor Brown and council members, for inviting our 5th graders to sing for you today. We have select choir members that represent 6 of our San Clemente schools. Benedict, whose principal is Heidi Harvey, let's wave. Concordia, Rob McCain. Las Palmas, Kristen Nelson. Marblehead, Dr. Faith Morris. Palisades, Kurt Fiska. And Vista Del Mar, Dr. Troy Hunt. Our visual performing arts director is Neil Anderson. Thank you again for all being here, and thank you parents and community for supporting us. we're going to sing a fun medley of songs for you. It's called A Holiday to Remember. Enjoy.
Bye.
If you wouldn't mind for a second, we'd love to get a picture with all the kids. Council's going to come up there real quick, if that'd be okay. And principals, if you're here, we'd love to have you join us. Come on up, too. That's so great. Holy cow. There we go. Come on up. You want us in the back? Yeah, I think we're back. Yeah.
A lot of energy.
Come on up. Good job, guys. Yeah, I wanted to see you. Perfect. All right, that's great. Great, thank you guys. Now we're going to talk financials. You guys are welcome to stick around. It's super fun. We'll even dance a little. Maybe sing. Good job, guys.
Fat row, come on, fat row. Come on, fat row. Hey, come on, fat row.
Hey, that was funny. That's great. That's so good. Yeah, we're going to talk money. It's what we do. Super excited. I know.
Thank you. Thanks. Good job, Kristen. Thank you so much for inviting us. Thank you.
Last chance, city fiscal reports. It's going to be exciting. Stick around. Yeah. Hey, we're in the black. It's good.
Oh boy, budgets.
Budgets. Budgets are best when they're boring and positive. Thanks, parents, for sharing your children with us tonight. It was beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, she's super amped out. They're only a few days away now. It's not 2 weeks is the reality right now. Actually, it's funny because I never get to just watch it all from parents' point of view.
I don't think so.
Can't see it.
Judy, at least next time, could you put on a Santa hat or something that's more festive
I'm
to
gonna
throw that
make a
in
note
there?
of that, yes.
Okay, no, that's all good. We remember, we like budgets boring. That's okay. No
It's
pet,
okay.
no
Very
excitement.
boring, yeah.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and this item is presentation by the Assistant City Manager and Deputy Administrative Services Director Vincent concerning the fiscal state of the city for the period ending June 30, 2017, fiscal year fourth quarter financial report, and fiscal year 2018 first quarter financial report.
Thank you, Joanne. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. As we said, I can't top what you just saw, but I'll do my best to present our financial information quickly with interesting information for you. So tonight, every year around this time, we check in with City Council with a brief overview of the city's finances. Tonight, we'll be presenting results from last fiscal year that ended on June 30th, as well as first quarter of this current fiscal year that ended September 30th. So our year-end results, fiscal year 16-17, you can see that our revenues were $3.7 million over budget and our expenditures $4.1 million under budget. So that's good news. We always want to have revenues exceed what we think we're going to get and have expenditures be a little bit lower. Now this, remember, includes both operating and one-time expenses. So this is capital, this is everything included here for the general fund. If we move on, our operating position, the operating revenue is $62.1 million. Now this takes out the capital and one-time items. So this is just operating revenue and operating expenses, almost like your income you get from your job and then you spend every year. So how much are we spending over what we bring in regularly? So $6.7 million is how we ended the year last year for our operating position. If we look forward, so that's the $6.7 million for last year. We projected $1 million for the current year we're in, and then our forecast for the next year after that is $200,000. So while this year looks good, as we look at it at the end of the year, it's because we have vacancies, we had some additional funding that came in from property taxes, and we'll talk about those in a minute, but we can't rely on that every year to be that large of a number. So I'm just kind of pointing that out. So if we move forward, this is our unassigned fund balance. So different than operating position, this is like your savings account. So at the end of 16-17, we ended the year with $12.5 million. For 17-18's budget, we had projected originally a $2.4 million. But now that we've adjusted the year end, we've made some other adjustments, we're looking at about $6.7 million that we would end the current year in our savings account, if you will. I think the thing to remember about this, too, is when we come back at mid-year, we'll be bringing adjustments in February or early March, and so that number will adjust either up or down based on what those adjustments are. I don't know why my little clicker is just not seeming to, okay, well, now I'm going too fast. Okay, so I think the thing we need to keep in mind as we look at those operating positions and we look at our unassigned fund balance is that we have a lot of fiscal challenges coming. And I feel like every year before Christmas I give this presentation, it's doom and gloom, and I'm sorry, Merry Christmas, but I don't want us to lose sight of being conservative with our funding because of these things that are coming up. So from a revenue side, our sales and property taxes, we've seen tremendous growth, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. However, a lot of that's related to new development. So as we're moving forward, we're not going to see the new development that we've seen in the past. And so those, while they may continue to grow, they may not grow at the same rate that we've seen. So we're expecting a slowdown in property taxes. And sales tax is kind of the same thing. A lot of people aren't going to the brick and mortar stores anymore. They're doing things online. And while we get a portion of that through the county pool, it's not the same as if they go to a store here in the city and buy something. We only get a portion when it's an online type sale. So we just got to remember that sales and property tax may not grow at the same rate. On the expense side, as we've talked about in the past years, we've got facility costs that we've had maintenance that we've sort of, I don't know if put off, but we know that we have a lot of infrastructure maintenance that we need to fund, as well as setting aside some reserves. We also have a number of CIP projects that need to be funded, and the way they're funded is from this one-time savings account. So there's a lot of them out there. In addition, there's a lot of information technology projects. And so you've seen those in the past with the LTFP, and we'll bring those forward again this year with the LTFP so you can see what we're doing. Another expense, contractual obligations. You'll recall we have an MOU with our employees. We're in the second year of that, but we have one more. So that's an obligation with an increase that we've already committed to. Public safety contracts, fire and police, we see those costs go up every year, and we expect those to continue to go up at probably one of the higher rates for fire at 4.5% is what we've been told. And police, it's a range, so maybe 3 to 5% in that as well. And then we have other ongoing operating costs, legal costs for some of the quality of life issues we've been looking at, short-term lodging units, the hospital closure, things of that nature. And then we also have rising pension costs. We've been told that changes to actuarial assumptions and the discount rate are going to mean higher pension costs in the future. So I just want to make sure we keep these all in mind as we move forward. If we look at just now the fourth quarter, so I'm going to kind of just dive into some of the numbers here quickly. These are the breakdown for the budget and actual for last fiscal year. So again, we see the actual come up at $66.9 million, where the budget was $63.2, so that was the $4.7 million over the budget. Some of the larger amounts that came in over budget were property taxes, about $1.5 million over what we had anticipated. And then also sales tax, about $300,000. Now, sales tax, it's related to a lot of one-time adjustments that were made, some audits that were done in prior years, so that amount is a little bit higher than it would normally be. So that's how we ended it with our revenues, doing pretty well, 106% of what we budgeted. So if we break down revenue, property tax, you'll see this is the last 2 years and then the year's budget. So $29.3 million, fiscal year 15-16. The year we just ended, $31.1 million. And for 17-18, we weren't looking at much of an increase over that. But at mid-year, this will probably get adjusted now that we've seen the actuals for 16-17. This will probably go up a little bit, but I don't expect it to go up a whole lot. Not $1 million, maybe a few $100,000. And then our other big revenue generator, sales tax, 15-16 at $9 million, 16-17, 9.9, and then 17-18 originally projected at 9.7. If you remember that 9.9 for last year, I just mentioned some of that is some one-time items that came in. So we're kind of looking at it being relatively flat year over year. But as we get results in, we adjust those at mid-year if something comes up that seems like that number's too low or too high. And then, let's see, so our expenditures, again, here's the budget and the actual. So we are under our budget for expenditures, which is good. The largest part of that is probably in salaries. We've had quite a number of vacancies throughout the year, and so that kind of adds up to a savings there in salary of about $750,000, as well as the savings in the benefits related. Other savings, capital outlay, we spent about $1 million less on capital projects, so you can kind of see what the differences are there in terms of the expenditures.
Could I ask a question on the capital balance? Is that just a timing issue? These are things that haven't happened and we're going to see them going forward, or did the projects actually come in less than projected?
It's a mix of both, I think, because sometimes projects just don't get started, and so it's hard to know until they get to that point whether they're going to take them off or not. So some projects come in lower. Most of them do because we don't go over on projects, but some of them are maybe a postponement.
It's interesting to me because the expense for capital projects countywide, the costs are far outpacing what the projections were because there's so much demand. So I'm surprised that ours would be less. So I can
look into that.
Yeah, I'd just be curious if things that you're rolling over to a later quarter or future year. Thank you.
Okay, and okay. So our general fund balance. So we talked already about unassigned, the savings account at $12.5 million, and then we have our emergency reserves at $11.4 million. So this is sort of a history of what our fund balance is, and what I like here is you see that small amount of growth. We don't want to see that number going down. So the fact that we see a small amount of growth and we see that our emergency reserves are where they need to be is a good sign for us. And then, moving on to the first quarter of this year, there's not a whole lot to report here, but we do like to just, mention to you so you can see it in context. Typically, we have higher expenditures and revenues in the first quarter. Our property tax, our biggest revenue source, comes in December and April. So as you can see, revenues for the first quarter at 6.5 compared to a total budget of 63.4 million, and then our expenditures at 15 million compared to the total budget of 68.3. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, this is a new clicker, isn't it? I had this problem before. I think the key to note here is that we're right where we expect to be at this time of year, so we keep monitoring it, but there's not a whole lot of information in the first few quarters. And then that's all of my presentation. I just want to mention that we do have the LTFP coming up. Gosh, man. In March 2018, and we'll be looking at some of our forecasting and some of our bigger issues. So happy to answer any questions if you have them.
I have a question or a suggestion for LTFP. We're now 8 years out of a recession.
Okay.
And I hope that you'll let us know what your thoughts are on that, because that, is unprecedented, that we would be in such a go-go period for so many years. And for those of us that were here during the recession, just want to make sure we have everything in place for any correction in what staff's view is on that.
Okay.
And then the second thing is, I don't know, about 8 years ago, our biggest source of sales tax revenue was gas tax. And Cal State Fullerton just released a study for the county, and it says that for San Clemente, our gas tax is no longer our biggest sales tax source. And I'd like to have that verified, if I could, by staff, because I don't know where they get their numbers. But
yeah, because I'm surprised here. Since I've been here, gas tax has not been a major revenue source. We don't have that many gas stations.
We do. I think we have 15, and the history on that is we were where you stopped between San Diego and LA, and you got your blown-out tire and your car service done.
Okay, so I'll look at that.
Yeah, I'm just curious because with the move to electric cars and some other things going on, it would just be interesting to see if that's something to watch or not.
Okay.
Okay. Steve, anything?
No.
Kathy? I think Councilmember Donchik makes a valuable point, is that this is very different from the 07, 08, 09 aftershocks, because when I proceeded in 010, the forecasting was a little dreary and the revenues and everything, so it was difficult at that time. And so just like anything in California, if anyone was lived there, we've had this cyclical progression that's happened over time. So we have to almost treat this as if it's an inevitability at some point that we're going to have a correction. And what will that look and feel like, and just making sure we have contingencies in place. It really isn't a question of if. It is a question of when we will have some form of correction, what that will look and feel like, and how that will affect us. One of the nice things about a city that doesn't have large revenue generating items is we don't really sink and we don't really, sail high. We're just very nice and consistent. So with that in mind, I'd like to make sure that we're obviously prepared for whatever the future may bring.
I think that's a very good point. I think it's important to know what it may be several pronged approach to how we would address that, but I think it's important that we look at, where do we have those safeguards and those safety nets built in.
I mean, there's nothing that stops us from modeling out another recession and what that would, what we'd have to do. I think we all know what we'd have to do because we've been through that time before, but ultimately it'd be nice to have that in the back of our minds.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is...
Oh, hold on. And Judy, will you please thank your staff for taking such good care of our money?
It's nice at Christmas to hear somebody who actually has positive, cash flow, Yeah. And the Finance Committee, of course.
Next is the Police Services update by Chief Mike Peters.
Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for the invite to come up and speak with you guys. I'm hoping to come back in late February, early March with a year in the review of 2017. My hope is to use this platform as much as possible, and the folks watching, to educate the public. I know you guys are seeing me at every speaking opportunity I can take. The goal is to educate the citizens of the city as much as I can, to use them to our benefit. That's the goal. So tonight, my hope was to kind of go over some of the reasons that we're seeing some of the things philosophically from one man's standpoint, and educate the public on some of our limitations, some of the things we can do, and some of the things they can do to help the situation. So I know you guys take a lot of questions. I know James and Eric take a ton of questions. I try to funnel them all through me before they get to you. They don't all make it there. So the first slide I actually took from the Department of Corrections, from their spring of 2017 population projections. So you'll see in 2010, the prison population was at 165,817. We're going to jump forward to 2021 in a second, but right about that time in 2010, 2011, we passed AB 109 and 117, and I know that you guys are all well aware of this, but I know much of the public is not. And basically what that was is a prison realignment bill, and that pushed low-level criminals, non-violent, non-sexual criminals, down to the county level. Well, county was already full, and so obviously there's a trickle-down effect, right? So we jump forward back to the graph, and we jump all the way down to 2012, and at that time we dropped a little over 30,000 prisoners were released into the system, into the streets of California. So then we jump forward to Prop 47. Prop 47 came through, and if you look, they came through right about 2014, and that's where we were sitting at about 135,000 at that point. Prop 47 comes in and it changes all of the criminality of narcotics and illegal drugs in California, and it changes everything we can do. What used to happen with personal use drugs was if an individual had an illegal narcotic or something on them, they knew it was a felony, they knew where they were going to jail, and typically they would run. We would catch them, we would take them to jail, and they would be gone for a while. Now they will pull the narcotics out of their pockets, hand it to our officers, and our officers will hand them a ticket. And that's how the system works. It's what the California voting public put in to effect, and that's what we have now. Thefts, the number was pushed from 400 to 950. That's a big jump. That's a big jump in what somebody can get away with stealing. Anything under that is a misdemeanor. And to be completely honest with you, we're not taking a lot of burglars. They're not staying in jail. Our guys, your guys, have been doing amazing work with catching burglary suspects, tracking them all the way to Long Beach and LA, because we have gang members that are coming down here, down the 5 freeway, and hitting our businesses that are close to the freeways. They track them, they arrest them. Within 2 weeks, they're back out. Time served. And we're tracking them again. Sir?
So it's basically, we can bust them, but the county and the prosecution just cuts them loose?
I can't even necessarily blame it on the county prosecution. And I do my best to avoid politics and leave that to you folks. But from Mike Peters' standpoint, it goes to the state level. The state level changed the way that we handle crimes. They changed the way that we prosecute crimes. They changed the way that we hand out sentencing. They changed it completely. So now if you commit 4 burglaries and we catch you for 4 burglaries and you get sentenced for 1 burglary. And so you can see that the time changes of how long they stay in prison, right? So Prop 47 drops us down to about 129,000. At that point, that was a game changer for us in the streets. It was a game changer. It changed everything we do, all the ways that we work. And I know that the public is frustrated. I know it. I feel it. I talk to the community constantly, just as you guys do, and I'm just as frustrated. Seeing that that beautiful choir up here earlier, that's why I do what I do. I love that. And this makes our job a lot harder. So now we go into what's in the future. Well, January, Prop 57 comes into effect. Prop 57, I'm hoping will not go to the point that Prop 47 did. However, the prison system's actual, if you look at what they're looking at for what they estimate, it will do the same thing Prop 47 did. It'll go from 129 to 122. So if I go back, you can look at some of the crimes that we voted in, and I say we because I'm a California voter also, even though I read it and I didn't vote it in. You can see what we voted in: assault with a deadly weapon, assault with force likely to cause, battery of serious bodily injury, rape, sodomy, oral copulation of an unconscious or intoxicated person, corporal injury to a spouse cohabitant, first-degree burglary when no one is home, inflicting corporal injury on a child, criminal threats, hate crimes, assault with deadly weapon on a peace officer, active participation in a street gang, attempt robbery, kidnapping, carjacking, stalking, arson is on there too. So, please.
Now, these all got dropped down to misdemeanors.
They got dropped down to either misdemeanors or low-level felonies. Thing about it is now it's more of a sentencing thing. Now they're not going to sentence them for the amount of time that they did. And so you have to understand that these folks that are sitting in jail right now for those violent crimes. Oh, I just killed it. Me and Judy have the same problem. It's this thing. It's not Judy's fault, it's this thing.
Thank you, Matt.
So we have the same, I apologize, I lost my train of thought because this thing went away. You can see that we're dropping from there, it's what they anticipate happening, 129 to 122. All of those folks that are sitting in jail right now, as of January, that fall under Prop 57 will come up for parole. So if they were looking at 20 to life, they're no longer looking at that. So the element that we face in Prop 47, the element that we face now are drug addicts who have a legitimate sickness. It's a debilitating sickness. We've released them into the streets, and if they're not forced to get help, many of them don't want the help. They don't want the help, and there's nothing forcing them to get the help. Typically, they're not going to hold down a job for very long. And so how are they going to fuel that habit? They're going to fuel that habit through theft. But they're not violent. They just fuel it through theft. So that's why our thefts have gone up. My thefts have gone up this year. We're up about 9% at the moment. At the end of the year, I'll be able to give you a better, closer look at where we are. But my thefts are up. Most of my crime is up. I'll come to my calls in a second. So Prop 57 is on its way. Please, you had a question?
Is 57 where we took the crimes that were violent and now they're not classified violent, and that's why they're less time?
Exactly.
Okay, so all of that is now, those were violent crimes, they have now been classified non-violent, so all those people are going to be getting out of jail because they were incarcerated under a violent...
Exactly.
Okay. That's all I wanted to make sure is which proposition changed those, and I thought it was 57.
Right, it was 57. And so for a grand total, if we look from 2010 to 2021, if their projections are right, for a grand total of 43,085 prisoners will have been released from the system and no longer go back into the system. So that's another key point. If you commit one of those crimes, you're more than likely not going back into the system.
So to get this right, we've reduced our prison population from 165,000 down to, so 40-something thousand we're reduced. But what's happened with our crimes committed during that same period of time?
And we're not, San Clemente's not alone in the fact that our crime rates have risen. San Clemente's not alone in that it's across the state. It's across the state that's risen. As well as what I'm going to highlight right now, 3 of our top problems here in the city has increased throughout the state. Of course, I know for everybody, the homeless issue within the city is one of those things that's a hot button. It's a hot button, and everybody's a part of it. A couple things that I want to point out, and I know that the public can get a little irritated by me saying this, because I know that they want me to protect them, and I want to protect them. But I won't violate somebody's constitutional rights, and nor will my people. And we work under the guidelines of the state of California, and it's not unlawful to be homeless. It's not. The thing about it is that there are things that we can do to try and alleviate it, but the bottom line is, and I'm reaching out to those of you watching in camera, the bottom line is, somewhere somebody voted for these propositions, 47 and 57, and I know they probably had good intentions on voting for them. And an overwhelming number of Californians voted. And so they had good intentions, but they voted them in, and now we're coming into the consequences. And our people are working nonstop. My calls of service are going to be close to 31,000 this year. So it'll be close to 1,000 or more over last year. So it's across the state that it's happening. On the homeless side, we're working our best through Eric and James, really, and to do our best to mitigate and to manage it, but at the same time, we're not going to solve it. The little city of San Clemente is not going to solve homelessness. We are going to do our best to manage them, and we're going to use the faith-based organizations. I had a meeting in Dana Point with them today to see what they're doing. And my job's to reach out to the other cities and find out what they're doing and where they're having success. And those that don't want to be homeless, that want to get into services and get help, we have the ability to help them. We have the ability to help them. Prop 47, it took away that ability for us to put somebody in jail and at least let them dry out. So now there's no repercussions for it. They hand you their illegal narcotics. You give them a ticket, they tear the ticket up because they know the courts aren't going to do anything about it, and they move on. So it's just as frustrating from our standpoint as it is for the public. And most of our deputies know how it was prior to Prop 47, and they want to go back because they could handle problems. When problems arose, they could handle those problems. Now it's difficult. It's bogged down in the court system. So it's one of those things. So I know homeless is an issue. I can promise you this, that from a sheriff's department standpoint and from a city standpoint, we are well aware of it and we are listening. We're listening to Facebook. I wish you would call us at the Sheriff's Department before you post it to Facebook, but that's okay. We're listening. Many have my email and my phone number goes directly to me. I know you folks get them and they come to me. I know James gets them, they come to me. We're doing everything we can. I want to caution the public in understanding, if it's on public property, there's a process, and it won't happen immediately. It's not how it works, and it can't work any other way. Because if we violate that procedure, then we open ourselves up for civil liability, and that's not what we want to do. I can guarantee Scott doesn't want any part of that. So we have a procedure. If it's on private land, if you've posted your land and you've communicated with us, those of you that have private property, and if you don't know your private property, if you don't know your property lines, get with the city and they'll tell you exactly what your property line is. So if it's on private property, you have to post it. Once it's posted, we can do something about it. So understand that there are rules. If you have any questions, you can always contact me and I can tell you those rules a little bit better. Our thefts. Now, our thefts have risen tremendously. This was a Ring video, and the reason I put it on there is the city has a very good program at getting a little bit of a discount on the Ring cameras. I am not shy about the fact that those Ring cameras or any other brand, I don't care what brand, are hugely beneficial for us for evidentiary. They're not that expensive these days, and the more of them out there, the better, because it allows us. This particular video, I believe, saw close to 2 million views due to Ring.com picking it up. And they're helpful, and they're not that expensive. There's many of them that are solar powered now, so they don't even have to be plugged in. They're hugely beneficial, and we truly like them. Throw this out there as a shameless plug. Any of the businesses that are listening in that want to help us, any of you that want to put a camera up on your business and allow us an IP address to get to look at evidence off of those videos, would be hugely beneficial to us. The more that the community works with us, the better that we're going to be able to work within the community. So the thefts are everything from going to the larger chains and making their way. Like I said, there are groups of gang members from Long Beach and LA coming down here. And it's not like they pinpoint San Clemente. I don't want anybody to think that. San Clemente is right off of the 5 freeway. Yorba Linda gets those same people right off of the 91. It's the arteries. So they travel down the arteries, they travel down at certain spots, and they commit their thefts. So yes, our thefts have risen. Now in the streets, they will not necessarily have to pawn this stuff, because somebody's out there's asking, well, what do they do with it once they steal it? They trade it. They barter with it. And they get what they need from that.
I understand easy bake ovens are going pretty hot on the
They
streets.
really
now.
are.
It's big time.
Think about what you could make with
You can
those,
cook
sir.
a lot of stuff in those things.
The drugs. I can't, I'm trying to do my best to track it and give you guys a future weight of how much we are taking out of the streets. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, the amount of drugs that our guys are pulling out of the streets. And what used to be a usable amount has grown. So it's a larger amount. The biggest thing that I want the public to understand, that methamphetamine is a big problem. It is a huge problem, and it destroys people's minds. It's a sickness, and once it grabs you, it won't let you go. And it will slowly chip away at your sanity. Heroin, they're mixing what's called fentanyl into heroin now, and it's lethal. It's not a game. We changed our gloves in first responders. Both fire and police changed the style of gloves, because the fentanyl will, once it goes into your skin, it'll get into your system, and it can kill you. It's 10 times the strength of heroin, and it's cheaper. So they're mixing it into the heroin. The scary part about it is heroin dropped in a location, picked up by somebody not knowingly, and then it's gotten into the system. We run into more and more difficulties. It is a scary, scary world when it comes to the drugs that are coming through every city in California. It's not just San Clemente, it's everybody. We're seeing it. And it's growing, and I'm not a doctor of criminology in one of the Harvard universities, so all I can state is from Chief Mike Peters, we can look at Prop 47 as the growth of this industry. The homeless population, if they are registered with the state, they get about $1,000 or so on an EBT card through California Fresh, and they can use that, they can trade with that. We have a great use of faith-based organizations that are doing their best to clothe and feed. So if they're clothed and they're fed, well, that money goes somewhere. So, other issues, other crime issues. This is one of those things that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out that to the public that we hear them, that I know and we understand. The neighborhood disputes, have a lot of them. We have 67,000 residents over 18.45 miles. We have a lot of interesting neighborhoods and interesting disputes, no matter what income level you're at. We hear you, but once again, there is a process to everything and how we do it. And so I need the public to understand that we will handle them, but we have to handle them within the law and how the law dictates. The noise calls and the traffic calls. We have a ton of calls in regards to traffic. We're doing our best. Those of you that have seen the unoccupied police car, I want the public to understand you never know if it's occupied or not, or if there's a motor by the unoccupied car. I'm looking at the camera right now. Hopefully they're seeing me. The hope is that people will just slow down. Slow down, obey the traffic laws. There is no reason for us to have as many accidents as we're having in some of our areas, Hermosa, La Plata, Veracruz. You know what? There's really no reason. And a lot of the noise complaints, a lot of the cars these days, they're cutting their mufflers. So a car can be going 30 miles an hour and it sounds like it's going 80. And in some of the new developments, that sound ricochets off the houses and off the walls, and it's like, whoa, a race car just drove down the street. And they're really not going that fast. But we are out there watching and doing our best to be present wherever it may be. So for the public, slow down. Be patient. You live in San Clemente. Be patient. Take on more of the beach attitude. Leave a little early for work, and everything will be fine. Real quick, I just wanted to jump through this. Calls for service, you can see how they're climbing. 2014, again, Prop 47. 2015 went to 27,000. 2016 at 29,979. Judy was right. At 12/13 of 17, when I grabbed this number, San Clemente was at 30,000. So we jumped we're past 29, and we're at 30,475. My guess is we'll go over 31,000 by the end of this month. Closest person to us would be Lake Forest at 28,247. To be totally honest with you, San Clemente always leads in calls for service across all the county cities. So it just is what it is. Any questions? Because
Chief, why is that we get so many calls?
I know why.
We are a quality of life city. Folks have high expectations, as they should. They in some cases pay a lot of money to live in this city, and they tell me about it. And I completely understand. And there are a lot of quality of life issues. Of course, we have crime. We're a beach city. We're a beach city, and every beach city has crime. But your deputies are extremely active and extremely diligent about getting to every call that we possibly can.
Steve?
Two questions regarding what the city can do to help our great deputies out there. One would be if the city turned around and produced or had produced a bunch of standardized no trespassing signs with the ordinance language in it and made that available for landowners, HOAs to come in and get them to try to promote and get more posting out there. Would that be of assistance for you to enforce our trespassing laws?
Sure, sure, and absolutely it would be. Anything that we do to help, it's going to give us another tool to be able to enforce. My only caveat to that is I need the public to understand that that's still a misdemeanor.
Right.
And we're not taking them away and they're not going away and staying away. That's not how it works. That's not how the system works.
And then the other question would be, what if? What if we ended up with some type of high-tech surveillance system in key areas where we have a lot of problems that we can then trace and track and find and record crime, so that we're not looking to spend the money to put more bodies on it, but we let technology take the place at a effectively less cost? Would that be a good idea?
Let me just say this too. I got permission from the boss right here. We've been discussing this. We've been discussing the use of that plus poll cameras, and I know everybody's like, oh, big brother, big brother. We're not using it to just watch the general public. We're using it to locate evidence to be able to convict people on crimes with that type of thing. Also, part of law enforcement, a big part of law enforcement has to do with report writing. We spend a lot of time documenting everything we do. That type of feed where certain areas was in our report writing room, at least the deputies, when they were writing their reports, could look up and see what's going on in public areas, not in somebody's private area, in public areas. They could see what's going on and say, oh, that looks interesting, and leave, and go and get there before the public sees it and reports it to us. So I've discussed that with James, as well as some other high-tech things that have come down in price and availability that would truly assist. Laguna Beach has plate readers leaving and coming into their city. We caught a bunch of pretty good burglary suspects out of our city because of their plate readers. And we actually arrested the individual in mid-California, just up near Bakersfield area, and he had no idea how we got it all, but it was because of Laguna Beach's cameras that picked up the license plate leaving at that time. So if somebody commits a burglary down on Del Mar at 3 o'clock in the morning, our only exits are jumping on the 5 or jumping out of here on the PCH. All we'd have to do is look at the plate reader information and go, who left the city? Well, this person lives here. This person, oh, wait, this person lives in Long Beach. Oh, and the car's attached to a known gang member. There's a location for us to start. So there's a ton of high tech out there, and James has been kind enough to listen to me rant, and I think we're moving in that direction.
I think they're good ideas. There's a lot of issues associated with them. So the chief and his staff are putting together a report right now on the use of plate scanners and poll cameras and some of the things that we might have to be aware of, data storage, data elimination. There are some issues going on in other cities. Pasadena is currently being sued by the ACLU over the use of plate scanners. So there are some different issues associated with them, but he is putting together reports so I could prepare it for the council, and we could take a look at it and see if that's the direction we want to go.
Lori? Chief, thank you for the really thorough report. It's very helpful indeed for us. And of course, we thank you and your deputies during this holiday season. We know you're all working hard for our safety, and we're very grateful.
Thank you. And to the public, all of the kind gestures that you show the deputies, it doesn't go unnoticed. I know that if you're paying attention to Facebook, we post everything on Facebook, including making fun of the chief. Those gifts, the kids, the bringing things to us, just saying thank you. It's huge. It's huge. So I can promise you there's not I saw the sunset today. There's not a deputy that doesn't love working in this city. So thank you.
Next is a report by Councilmember Swartz concerning animals available for adoption from the St. Clemente Dana Point Animal Shelter.
Hey, everybody. So we're getting to the end of the year. This is the season for giving and maybe saving. So just to let you know that we have a very active animal shelter that we share with Dana Point. Is located here up the street from my office. And we have some great animals and some great pets that are just looking for someone to love back. So first one that we have up for you to see today is Elsie. Elsie, she is a spayed boxer. She's about 2 years old, so rather young. She can be rather exuberant in her personality. She loves walks, runs around and plays in the yard, and she loves dogs and people, and she's looking for a permanent home. So if anyone is interested out there in Elsie, please go up La Plata and turn right, and you'll run right into our shelter. Next we have nice little Ryan, and he's living at the shelter waiting for a home. He's only 10 months old. He's male. Please keep your cats indoors. We live next to hills and that are frequented by a lot of coyotes. So for those that maybe have lost a cat or would like to bring one into their home for the holiday season, I think Ryan would love crawling to the top of a Christmas tree and going for the star on top. So give Ryan a try. And then we also, of course, we can't leave the ladies behind, and we have Ladybug here. And her, she's only 5 months old. Gorgeous black and white markings. She's a bit shy, but hey, she's a nice lap warmer looking for a permanent lap to warm. So please give her a try. And then we have Chico. He's a good-looking fellow. He's kind of easygoing, not overly energetic. He'll go along with whatever the family would like to do, and he's simply looking for a family to take him in. He's one of the favorites there at the shelter, so you go in and ask for Chico. Any of the volunteers there, I'm sure, will be able to get you to his cage. And then just to remember, this is, Christmas time is a great time to share your home with a new pet and to educate the kids on responsibility and now there's things for them to take care of. So here is the phone number for the animal shelter, or if you can always look it up on the city's website. So for our holidays, we wish you to have a Merry Christmas and a hamster in your Christmas tree.
Thank you, Steve.
Next is a report from the Public Works Director concerning the upcoming relocation of City Hall offices to the city facility at 910 Negocio.
Good evening, Mayor Brown and members of the council. Tom Vonnegut, Public Works Director, and I'm here to give you a brief update on our progress to remodel the 910 Calle Negocio building in anticipation of moving City Hall staff from this building to that building. So, briefly, as a reminder of the scope and what we're doing, we're preparing the third floor of that three-story building for the staff at this location to move over there. The current tenant has been occupying most of the third floor, and they will be moved out by the end of December, which will clear the way for us to prepare that floor. The second floor has tenants in leases of various durations, and for now the plan is just to leave that as is. We'll revisit that under your direction in the future, but right now that's not part of this project. Excuse me. And then the first floor, we're planning a remodel to improve the function and provide better service to the customers that currently come there and that will be coming there when the utility billing and other public-facing functions are moved from this site to that site. Our approach on this remodel has been to minimize the interior building modifications, which just means I'm trying to use as much of the existing offices and wall space without having to tear things up and minimize the cost. And then we do have a related project to improve the exterior of the site to make the entrances to the building ADA compliant and repair and rehabilitate the parking lot. In terms of status, we have the layout and the design done for the third floor, and we're preparing construction documents. In a moment, I'll show you what that entails. It's fairly minimal work to get the third floor ready. On the first floor, we're finishing also the design layout. We're doing some final reviews, getting feedback from the staff to help us plan for that. And then your council at your last meeting did award the contract to do the exterior improvements, and we're currently executing the documents, getting the bonds, insurance, and we expect to start that right after the new year. So all I want to point out here, and first by way of orientation, this is the floor plan on the third floor of the Negocio building. Towards the bottom of the slide is the side of the building that faces Calle Negocio, which is what most people would think is the front of the building, and then towards the top faces Avenida Pico to the rear of the building. This is largely the existing layout. This is the existing wall plan. These are how the offices are laid out. The color coding is just our key to make sure we've accounted for everyone and have some logical groupings of the different departments that will be housed on the third floor. The only significant modifications we're planning on doing is at the bottom middle between those two dark spots there. There's a conference room that we will build. So we'll build 3 walls to establish a large third floor conference room and another wall modification. Otherwise, we're leaving the layout, including the existing kitchen and break room as is. That'll greatly minimize the cost and reduce our work to painting, carpet cleaning, and some cabling work. And there is a item on your consent calendar for that that I know you read. So that's our third floor plan layout. Again, it will house all the staff and also provide for future growth. It has areas to accommodate workstations and cubies that can be flexed as needed. Or even if there's a desire or need to build extra conference room or other space, we have it on the third floor. On the first floor, again, the bottom is towards Negocio, and the key feature I want to point out here is, as you're all aware, currently our lobby actually faces the rear of the building. That's sort of the main entrance for city business. So everything is keyed on turning that around and actually facing it forward to where the public would normally want to come and where they do. And the building layout is old and awkward, and there's no pass-through corridor through the elevator lobby. You have to walk through the copper room. It doesn't work well. So we are proposing to completely redesign the lobby, have the departments in kind of separated but functional work areas. So for example, if you're looking at that middle bottom there, off to the left there, you've got a purple area, building would be there, blue is planning, business license, green engineering, and then the light blue in the bottom left would be our utility billing functions, which would serve as a central cashier so people have one stop to pay for permits, parking permits, building permits, business licenses, all the cashiering and the monetary functions happen in one secure station. The other color coding is just for us, again, to keep track and reconsolidate the work groups. We have them split throughout the building over the years. We have staff, for example, in engineering, that are in 4 different locations. So in the top right, that whole green area is Public Works Engineering. Bottom right, blue is planning. Bottom left in the light tan would be code enforcement in their own secure area. And then the purple would be community development and building. And we've also we've reestablished a meeting room at the top middle there, which could be fobbed and used for after-hour events while the rest of the building remains secure. And it opens up the elevator lobby. So we are in one of the final iterations. We'll be working with staff again. We've had a lot of feedback from all parties, and it's all keyed on how can we make that customer experience first and foremost in the lobby work better for people who are coming in and doing various transactions with the city. There are a lot of items on this plan schedule. My point here is just to let you know we are working off a milestone and trying to work through this process in an expedient manner. Our target is by April, hopefully by the end of April, we'll be in a position to have City Hall staff moved over to the third floor and open for business there. That's what we're working under. And we think right now that's reasonably achievable given the relatively minimal improvements we'll need to do on the third floor. Our goal is by early 2019 is to have the first floor complete and actually have everyone in their new spots and open for business. And there may be a phased transition as we have to move some work groups around to do the work, and we may use space on the second floor to temporarily house some groups while we kind of move the Rubik's Cube pieces around. And we are largely on the schedule that was shared with you in the LTFP. We're just switching it around and doing the third floor first because we can make that happen and consolidate. So that's what we're working under. And then finally, just to give you a snapshot on budget, if you recall, currently we have $500,000 in the approved budget for this. And so at this time, given some of the actual costs and some of our estimates, we think that will be sufficient to cover the move of all the City Hall people and get them into the third floor. It also includes the design costs for the first floor. And then we'll return to you in your consideration of the fiscal year 19 budget with the estimated construction cost to do the first floor, which wouldn't happen until fiscal year 19 anyway. And our goal is before you get into your LTFP workshop that Judy mentioned, we'll have a pretty good construction estimate as we'll have our documents done by then. I don't know what that is right now, but our goal is to have that number so we can see how that fits with the other priorities you may be considering. And with that, that's my overview. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Lori, Steve, Kathy, thank you. Appreciate the information. We're excited to see how it's going to work.
Great, thank you.
Members of the audience who wish to address council on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the City of San Clemente, but not separately listed on the agenda, may do so during the oral communications portion of the meeting. A total time limitation of 30 minutes is allocated for oral communications part 1, with each speaker being allotted 3 minutes in which to give his or her presentation. We have some questions.
So I think at this juncture it's probably appropriate that anyone who would like, we normally have a toll road update at the beginning of our meeting. Anybody who would like to speak on the toll road item, this would be an appropriate juncture to do so. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. We have first John Dory with Friends of San Clemente Foundation update. Following John is Ed Stewart.
Mayor Brown, congratulations, by the way, and City Council members. My name is John Dory, and I'm here tonight to speak as president of the Friends of San Clemente Foundation. And I have a handout I'll give to you. Basically, I'm going to read from that, and you can have it in your file after I'm done. But for this is appropriate based upon the conversation that you folks had here with Tom Vonnegut. For the past 17 years, the Parks Department has submitted a request to the Friends of San Clemente Foundation to help fund specific recreational programs and scholarships for our community. Each year, the Friends Foundation makes every effort to meet or exceed these requests. In 2017, we had a request for $50,000, but had to trim that back to $45,000, knowing we had previous city obligations for that year. $10,000 for the trolley was one of those obligations, as well as the Sports Wall of Fame ceremony. Our actual outlay of sponsor money within our community in 2017 was approximately $60,000. It should be noted that in 2017, our organization ran a negative cash flow of nearly $16,000. Foundations cannot print money, and raising money is restricted to the success of their active fundraising programs and manpower. Consequently, the Friends of Foundation made a program adjustment at our 2017 Carnival, saving approximately $4,000, and in 2018, we'll make a slight increase in our cost for a foursome at our June charity golf tournament, but unfortunately, that will be offset by the rising food costs for the event. With the above happening, there is an intense pressure on our ability to continue funding the city's recreational needs at the $45,000 level. In fact, it is very possible that we may need to cut that number by more than 50%. Allow me to explain why. Our foundation was informed several months ago that we will no longer be able to remain in the office location on the city property in Negocio. This has significant financial implications to us and ultimately the City of San Clemente and Parks Department. We have been told by the city administration that we will need to relocate by March. Maybe there's some flex in that after looking at the charts. And at this moment in time, we do not have a solution. Therefore, we will be creating a conservative line item rental placeholder of $24,000 in our cash flow model until we can determine what our true rent expense will be going forward. For 17 years, our organization has enjoyed a solid bond between our generous, charitable giving community for quality of life programs and the Parks Department. We developed that relationship to ensure that scholarship money was available to financially challenged families so they could pay for city-directed recreational programs and swim lessons. Our contributions completely or partially supported such programs as Fun on the Run, the Egg Hunt at Springtacular, the Santa Village Snowslide, the beach concerts, movies in the park, Sports Wall of Fame, swim lessons, recreational programs, etc. We also incubate money for programs such as Courtney Sandcastle, Junior Lifeguard Foundation, and San Clemente Skate Coalition. All of those programs, can I speak for just a little bit longer? I think it's important. All of these, aren't all of us though, sorry. All of those programs include our ability to perform as an incubator in the future have been placed in jeopardy. For the first time since our inception, we may have to pay rent, which in this town can be expensive. We currently enjoy the use of 700 square feet of city space that allows us to have part-time administrative assistant and also room for the cyber cafe. For those who don't know what the cyber cafe is, it provided in-depth computer and smartphone instructions and training to over 10,000 seniors and adults in our community.
Okay, John, are you?
Pardon me?
Just a couple more.
Yeah, and the reason I'm here, publicly ask the council if they know of anybody that might have buildings or opportunities for us, and also the public to come and maybe, if they do have information on space available, either for a inexpensive opportunity or maybe even to be a benefactor for us, call us at our Friends Foundation office at 949-276-8866, and I appreciate the opportunity and the time.
John, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to chat with you a little bit more about it. Could you reach out to me and
sure,
we can be briefed on it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Stewart. Following Ed is Stephen Vale.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, my name's Ed Stewart, and I am a city contractor, and I live here in the city of San Clemente. The first part of next year, city staff is putting all of its maintenance contracts out to bid under the prevailing wage guidelines. I am in 100% agreement with city staff. I believe it's transparent and it's fair to any contractor that wants to work for the city of San Clemente, with the exception of one contract. That's Rod's Tree Service. I don't have to tell anyone in this room what Rod has done for this community over the last 40 years. From building parks, to baseball fields, to our Cinco de Mayo festival, Memorial Day events for veterans, and feeding over 1,000 Marines and their families twice a year. Besides all of that, he does a beautiful job on 2,500 trees in the city. I believe this contract, if this contract were to go to another contractor, it would cost or could cost the city up to an additional 30% just to oversee it. I've seen tree work in other cities and I'm not very impressed. I don't believe we can afford to take the chance to lose this asset. So I'm respectfully asking the council to direct staff to negotiate Rod's contract under prevailing wage and award it to him for the next 5 years. Thank you very much. By the way, I love this photo that you guys have up here.
Great. Thank you.
When I was on it, I didn't think I would ever see the end of that pier.
Thanks, Ed. I would
Thank
love
you.
to chat with you a little bit more about that.
Okay.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Stephen, following Stephen, Eric Anderson.
Excuse me. Sorry, Stephen, and following Stephen is Eric Anderson.
I'm Steve Veely, and I'm representing the toll road resistance and have maybe a little bit of an unusual request of the council.
We have been trying to recruit people with San Clemente connections who've achieved celebrity status to help us with our effort to stop the toll road. And we've mainly been asking these people to pose with our signs and allow us to caption them and put them on our various websites, and to use for various purposes, especially including drawing people in who haven't so far paid attention to the risk of this toll road being built and its impact on our city, and also to give a face to our resistance and make the TCA realize we're a large and deep resistance and not something to be taken with a grain of salt, as one TCA member says. We've identified 2 people of significance in particular in San Clemente, or with San Clemente connections. One is Ryan Johnson, who is the current writer and director of the just released Star Wars Last Jedi that's very big. He was recently featured in the San Clemente Times. He grew up in San Clemente and went to San Clemente High School. And the other one is Jorge Garcia, who was a prominent member of the Lost cast as Hurley, and currently is on Hawaii Five-0. I've been trying to reach out to these people, and by sending letters and emails and contacting, I've actually gotten as far as their managers' offices and talked to various people who are always nice and say that they will help, but usually don't end up getting results for us. I've been doing this for about a month. I think because they don't really consider us, you know, they don't really know who we are and whether we're, you know, a legitimate group and that sort of thing. The article in the San Clemente Times mentioned Ryan Johnson's brother, Aaron, who is a musician of some repute and a music producer who continues to live in the Cypress Shores area and operates a studio called Little Big Studio. And I have, through the website of that studio, tried to contact him. I did so last Friday. Haven't heard back from him, but my hope and our hope is that we might get the city council to sign on to our effort to recruit these people and give this some legitimacy. I actually wrote a kind of, you know, mock-up letter that you might, if you were willing to use, to send to these people. I do have ultimately addresses for the managers and for Aaron Johnson that we could send such letters to. Obviously, this is just a, you know, a shell idea of how you could do it. I know you're perfectly capable of producing your own letter, but if you were willing. But I'd like to give this to you. I've made a copy for each of you and let you consider whether it's something that you would be willing to sign on to, so that maybe we can get the attention of these people and get them to help our effort. Okay?
Great idea. Thank you, Steve. Next is Eric Anderson. Following Eric Anderson is Eric Willis.
Good evening. Eric Anderson, lifetime resident of San Clemente, and I'm here with the Capistrano Shores community. I wanted to come tonight in the general comment period to just thank each of you and also city staff and Scott's team as well, especially Cecilia for the letter that was and testimony that was prepared for the record at the December 14th Coastal Commission hearing regarding the LUP. The Capistrano Shores community is obviously also very committed to that process, and we will be actively engaged in that throughout. We're here to support the city staff so we can all work together and effectively create a document that protects the city, as well as the 110 homes and families, 110 families that reside in the Capistrano Shores community. I believe that we all recognize and agree that this LUP and ultimate implementation plan will become a very powerful document for the city and could very well determine the future of the Capistrano Shores community, a community that has been in this city since 1959. These are generational homes for many residents in the park. These are people with real homes, owners who pay their property taxes, support business establishments. These are the sons and daughters of San Clemente who have spent 58 years of life in this community. And ultimately, we desperately need our city to protect us through this process. The Coastal Commission is very aggressive in their policies, as you guys I'm sure would agree and have notated in your testimony and support. And you know, one small community, we're just not going to make it without your support as well. I'm here tonight to implore each of you to continue to work with us to find a path forward that will not only protect the property rights of the community, but also protect the future of the park as well. We have a small window and a great deal of work to do before the upcoming February deadline. And I'm hopeful that we can work together and find a plan that fits for everyone and does not leave any community in the city without the necessary property rights to protect their families and their property. Thank you very much.
Next is Eric Willis. This is our last card for public comment.
Mayor, Councilman, Eric Willis, also on behalf of Capistrano Shores. I just want to get in a little bit more detail than what Eric said. You know, this process has been going on for about 3 years here, and we were actively involved for the first year and a half, and we actually came to agreement with the city on probably 95% of the language. And then at the last minute, the city council decided to white hold us, or deferred certification, I think is the proper term, and then submitted the plan to Coastal Commission. Well, Coastal Commission, after the plan being there for a year or so, included us back in. And Cecilia wrote a nice letter to them that said, hey, we don't think that's fair. And Coastal Commission said, hey, we have no choice. Capistrano Shores was certified back in the original one. We can't exclude them. So now we're back in the process. And as Eric said, there's very limited time. And if you go through, and I know it's a daunting document, but if you go through and look at the changes that the Coastal Commission made, you'll be appalled. They want you to be on the forefront of the word existing development and redefine that basically for the state of California to January 1st, 1977. And they want you guys to be on the point for that, okay? They also want to say that you can't protect your home, whether you're on a bluff or you're on the coastline. You don't want to do that. Anyone live in Cypress Shores? You want to remodel your home? They want public access to go through your community. So there's a lot of work to be done between now and this February hearing, and I know there's thousands of pages of stuff. We just gave you 43 pages of comments yesterday. We want to work with staff. Cecilia, I think she has a good handle on it, but we want to work together with you to see if there's something that we could do to get rid of some of these things. But I will encourage you that under the Coastal Act, the Coastal Commission cannot require you to do these changes that they're asking you to do. They have to follow the policy under Chapter 3 of the Coastal Act, and they can't ask you to redefine things or have this groundbreaking definition of different things. They just can't do it. And you need to stand up and tell them no. So anyway, we look forward to working with you over the next month or so to try to get this thing done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have a motion to waive reading in full of all resolutions and ordinances?
So moved.
Motion by Doncheck, second by Schwartz. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Closed session report, City Attorney.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. There was no reportable action taken tonight. The Council did not discuss the first case listed via San Clemente versus City of San Clemente, but the rest were discussed and had no reportable action. The Council did, at its last meeting, approve settlement of part of a case. And this case is, well, the settlement involves a defendant in the lawsuit filed against the Transportation Corridor Agencies and the County of Orange. The city and the county have been able to reach terms in a settlement agreement. The settlement was approved unanimously by the council at its last meeting and by the Board of Supervisors at its meeting last Tuesday. So that settlement is final. A couple of high points that maybe bear worth mentioning. Most of the city's dispute about the county had to do with the county's partnership with TCA to build the interchange between the current terminus of SR 241 and Oso Parkway in Mission Viejo. And San Clemente's concerns in that case were that not only the bridge, but also Los Patrones Road, a new county arterial being built south of Oso, might be co-opted and converted to freeway use. In fact, TCA had acquired an option in that right-of-way to be able to do that. And so rather than leave those things fluid, a central issue in our lawsuit is that those things should not be fluid. There's no environmental analysis of them. They're inconsistent with the legislation authorizing SR 241. So we wanted to nail those things down, have the county agree with us that Oso Bridge is just Oso Bridge and nothing more. And so that's what the settlement does. The county had entered into a freeway agreement and a cooperative agreement with Caltrans and TCA. And in our settlement agreement, the county agrees that those agreements do not permit utilization of Los Patrones as a toll road. The county also agrees with us that the green alignment, i.e. the original alignment from Oso to I-5 south of us, has been abandoned pursuant to the settlement agreement that TCA entered into. The county agrees that the cooperative agreement only permits the county to use Oso Bridge to create a grade separation to a surface street, i.e. Los Patrones. This is an important one. It doesn't sound like it, but the county agrees in our settlement that it has been able to fund the construction and completion of Los Patrones Parkway without tolls. If an agency can finish a parkway like that without tolls, then it cannot, no one may charge tolls to use that freeway. And since that arterial has been completed with the help of the master developer of Rancho Mission Viejo and other sources, the county has agreed here that tolls are unnecessary to fund it, and therefore it can't be converted into a toll road. The county agrees that the option that TCA bought for Los Patrones Parkway has expired pursuant to a June 14th letter from the ranch to the county. And then most importantly, this is a condition that will remain unfulfilled until the county can get to it, and they're in the lawsuit until they fulfill this. But under the agreement, the county agrees to process and consider remove a general plan amendment that will remove any mention of a toll road or a freeway south of Oso in that alignment in the county's general plan. So the county will take that forward. I anticipate that they will delete that freeway from their circulation element, and then they'll send that to OCTA to be the new version of the county's contribution to the MPA. Thank you. The county's, the region's long-term transportation plan. So again, just wanted to give recognition to the representatives from the county who worked really hard with us to get this done before we had to enjoin that public works project, and now they've agreed that that project is nothing but an interchange that's the new terminus of SR 241 and the beginning of Los Patrones Parkway as it heads our way.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments?
I would just like to first say thank you to BB&K and Scott Smith of our legal counsel, and say that I'm so happy that we could reach an agreement with the county on this issue and settle this.
I'd also like to add my thanks and appreciation, and also it looks like Los Patrones is on schedule to open as a free arterial late March of 2018.
We have a whole bunch of free arterials here, too. No, that's a free, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate that rundown.
All items listed on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion unless council, staff, or the public request removal of an item for separate discussion and action. Staff has requested the removal of item 6L for discussion. Yes.
Steve?
6H.
6B4.
6B4.
For what?
Ba-dum-bum, yeah. I don't have anything.
Move the balance.
Motion by Ward, second by Doncheck. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Let's start, let's see, we've got L8. Kathy, let's start with you.
Okay. 6B4 is simply the minutes to the Planning Commission meeting. And this, if you can find the page, it has to do with what was reported out of the meeting, and it has to do with the item of the outlet mall signage towards the end of the page 6B4, page 5. It says noted agreement that freeway-oriented signage is allowed for this project as per the development agreement between the city and the developer of the outlet mall. I understand the rest of the paragraph goes on to clarify that. I would like, this is still a draft, I would like the Planning Commission to reconsider that very first sentence. I think with the issues of the outlet mall, saying that the agreement, that they noted that the freeway-oriented signage is allowed per the development agreement, I just think that is, I heard it at the Planning Commission meeting and it hit me then, but to have it in our minutes, I think I would like that clarified and see some different language maybe.
Well, it's
what they understood.
It's a commentary.
It
It's
is
it's not an ordinance or a policy position.
It's not, but it's going to then come to us as the comments from the Planning Commission, and I think they just did it's commentary, but I think they made, their choice of words maybe could be, they could clarify them. And I would just ask if maybe they would look at it and clarify it, and if they feel they can't, then that's the way it is.
So you would, what you'd like to do is to send back these minutes for clarification?
It's a draft anyway, they're going to consider it tomorrow.
Okay.
But I just wanted to comment.
What are you looking for clarity on? I don't find it ambiguous.
Noted agreement that freeway-oriented signage is allowed for this project as per the development agreement between the city and the developer of the outlet mall. I just think the word maybe allowed is an unfortunate term, and I'm not making any statement. I just don't want to see a statement be made like that.
Well,
if it's not true.
I mean, I definitely want to ensure that we want to respect what you're trying to do, but if truly their discussion is characterized by that comment, then it would be inaccurate to represent it any other way. So it wouldn't necessarily be a meeting minute, then it would be where we're creating a narrative, right? And so I think if you want it to be written differently, then we need to maybe ask the city clerk to relook at the conversation, ensure that this matches up. But it's not necessarily that this is a policy code, but it really should represent what was said. Even if it's not something you agree with, it should represent the tone or content of that conversation, unless I'm mistaken.
No, I agree completely also. It's not change history and change what was discussed. The result is the result that they got after this discussion.
I mean, there's plenty of stuff I don't agree with that comes before us as a recommendation from the other commissions and committees. But, I mean, we just have to simply take that as part of our consideration, one way or the other. Okay. And perhaps the direction is to the city clerk is to ensure that it is accurately represented in these notes, and that was, and that's being represented. I think that's really all we can do, unless I'm mistaken, Joanne. Maybe you could tell us the purpose of meeting minutes and how that's done.
Well, I believe that the portion you're talking about, it says that it's comments that were raised, and it doesn't necessarily reflect consensus. Is it something like that? So, Councilmember Swartz is completely right. You can't rewrite history. We can ask the planning to just check it and make sure that the way that it's written is accurate. If it's accurate, it's accurate, and maybe it's not. Maybe it is poorly written.
Or perhaps
but you can't change what happened.
Okay, absolutely. And perhaps in this case, maybe some additional detail as to whether or not there was consensus, because discussion is different from consensus in this sense. And if it isn't consensus, then perhaps the tone is a number of commissioners discussed, but certainly not the entire body agreed that this was allowed under that. So maybe the detail that would truly represent what happened. But we just have to let them make that call, and then we'll take a look at the final draft, I guess, at some point. That doesn't come back. This is the draft.
It would be planning approves planning's minutes. Council just receives and files or pulls something off.
I see.
But the body that did it is the body that decides if they're accurate.
Okay. I kind of think we have what we have here.
Yeah, I guess, Joanne, I don't know, a message to the planning commission, just make sure that they actually said the word allowed.
Okay.
That's what I think jumped out at me.
Or if we want to provide direction, planning commission, maybe they could clarify at some point as to, I don't know if that would be appropriate. I guess we'd have to notify that as a discussion point. So.
Well, staff can certainly mention tomorrow that council was sensitive to that. Was this your intent? Do you want to make changes or not?
But I'm not sensitive to it, so these are their minutes.
It is, I just wanted to make sure that that's what was said, because we're all we all want to know what the development agreement said, and that seems to be a bone of contention, and just this statement in there is not what I
think if at this point, I think it is what it is. If you want to review the video and maybe, disagree when this comes up to consideration, then that would be probably the appropriate venue for it. Where you say that I've reviewed the video, there was maybe a divergence there, and here's, what the accurate is. Fact is this is under our consideration anyway, so. They will be under our consideration.
Right. All right.
Okay. Do you want to move the item?
I'll move it with that.
Second.
Motion by Ward, second by Schwartz. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Next is, what do we have, H? H.
Okay, so, I would just like to understand our current RFP process. When we have a vendor who a contractor who currently has the contract, doesn't know we put it up for bid, and we're using Planet bids to post it. We don't put things in the green sheet.
We put them in the Orange County Register, a public notice, and we posted them on Planet bids.
All right. Because there's lots of there's the green sheet, there's Periscope, there's all other, but we only, the citywide for all contracts, that's what we use?
To my knowledge, is Orange County Register public notice and then posted on Planet bids.
Okay. Because I hate giving the guy an extension because he didn't realize his contract was up for expiration and didn't ask if they should bid it or not. So it's more just to see to make sure that we have, and maybe staff can look at more ways to get word out so we get more participation in the bidding process. And I'm guessing from when I read through this, it looks like that's what you're going to do.
Yes.
You're going to take a hard look at it.
We did have 57, I believe, from memory, contractors notified through Planet bids. It comes back and tells you who was notified once you select the criteria for the bid package. Okay. And there was 57 vendors, I believe was the number, that were notified.
And all 57 had no interest in bidding on it?
Apparently not.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and move the item for approval.
Motion by Schwartz, second by Donchuk. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Last item is item L. That's pulled by staff.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Council. We just want to take a minute and maybe explain this a little bit, especially to the extent the public might be interested into it. To do this, I want to introduce my colleague David Perucci. David is a reformed planner. He has a master's in planning from Cal State San Luis Obispo, and then returned to school and got his JD at UCI. So he's been working with Cecilia's staff on this, has a quick presentation to explain this because it has some detail that maybe it doesn't make it obvious to the untrained eye. David.
Thank you, Scott. Mayor, City Council, this item concerns the initiation of a general plan amendment that would clarify the implementation of Measure V, as well as the invalidity of the State Road 241 alignment that TCA proposed to run through the City of San Clemente. So beginning with Measure V, Measure V requires, as you know, voter approval to change an open space designation to a non-open space designation. And this requirement was first adopted by the City Council in 2007 as a policy. And then in 2008, the voters approved Measure V, which codified this policy as a general plan amendment. And since Measure V was enacted by the voters, it can only be changed with another amendment by the voters. Now, Measure V has some exceptions to the voter approval requirement. One of these exceptions includes the allowance of uses that fall under certain categories. One category is public roads. And so the general plan amendment could help clarify the application of these Measure V exceptions, including this public roads category. And so informing this clarification would be the context of Measure V at the time it was adopted. And so, for example, at the time of Measure V, the major arterial roads that were anticipated were extensions of Camino del Rio and La Plata. And also, before Measure V was approved, the City of San Clemente and Orange County formed the Talega Joint Planning Authority, which was intended to oversee the annexation and development in the northeastern region of the city. And so as the Talega JPA, the city and the county entered into a development agreement with Talega Associates, the developer for the property, which included a requirement that these parties oppose a toll road anywhere in the City of San Clemente. And so this still exists today in the development agreement, and we have the section up here. The public agency parties, again, that's the Talega JPA, comprised of the city and the county, as well as the city and the developer, shall oppose construction of any roadway alignments adopted or proposed by the Foothill Eastern Transportation Corridor Agency that traverse through the city or any property within the jurisdiction of the Talega JPA. So this helps clarify that under Measure V, a public road cannot mean a TCA toll road. The second point here is to further acknowledge the invalidity of State Road 241's alignment through San Clemente. We believe that for several reasons, it's invalid and should be removed from the city plans. Here are three of those reasons. As Scott mentioned earlier, there was a settlement last year with TCA, which prohibits this alignment through the city of San Clemente, as shown here in the orange line on this map. Second, this alignment of 241 is not represented on the city's general plan roadway systems map. Again, the only two anticipated arterials planned here were Camino del Rio and La Plata, as shown in the dashed purple and orange lines in the top middle of the map. And then third, as mentioned earlier, the city entered into this development agreement with the developer of the Talega property, as well as the Talega JPA, which again comprised of the city and the county, to oppose any toll road by TCA anywhere within the city's jurisdiction. So looking to what the general plan amendment and possibly some specific plan amendments could do here, one would be to clarify the review process for applications that may trigger Measure V, as well as clarifying how these exceptions are determined, in particular this public roadways category exception. Also an acknowledgement that the State Road 241 alignment is now invalid, and with that the removal of the 241 alignment from anywhere in the general plan or specific plans as applicable. Thank you.
So, Council, unless you have questions of David or me, what's before you is the initiation of this cleanup amendment. And really, we've already taken the fine-tooth comb through all city enactments that are on the books to carry this out. So this would be referred to the Planning Commission to make it official, and then come back to the council with enactments that make these carve-outs and clarifications.
I'll move for its approval.
Second.
Motion by Schwartz, second by Doncheck. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0 with a unanimous hoo-ha.
It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Go get them.
Before we proceed to our public hearings, let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll, just 5 minutes, so back at 7:55, 6 minutes.
it easy. It's getting harder and harder. Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, okay.
Ready? Okay, the
Mr.
public
Commissioner,
hearing.
hold on, there is an emergency item that we just heard about, and we have to address that before we go anywhere. I understand that Eric is having a birthday today, is that right? I know, we all want to get home, but I think it's important that we sing you happy birthday.
Oh, no.
As a council.
Yes.
I think this is extremely important that we celebrate this to all the city employees.
Yes.
But we don't have to put it on here. We don't have to put it on record here. I'll turn off the microphone and we can sing it to you. No, oh, okay, I'll leave it on for me. How's that? Yeah. Ed is waiting here. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. Assistant City Manager. Happy birthday to you. Do you need a moment to compose yourself after that emotional outpouring? Yeah, exactly. I think I saw a tear rolling down his cheek at some point.
You know, too bad he had those white walls now because they turned kind of pinkish.
Hey, Eric, listen, I'm tired of waiting for you. Why don't we get cracking here? What's going on?
So thank you, Mayor, and thank you for those as well that participated. Before you tonight, we have our annual mitigation report that's required, as noted in the agenda report under Government Code Section 66001 and 66006. As you recall, this is something that we have to do annually, so every December we do the annual, and then we are required to do the 5-year mitigation, which will be in another 2 years, which is the more comprehensive mitigation report filed. Tonight's a public hearing, so the purpose of this is to disclose all of our mitigation fees and provide the appropriate updates to funding and projects that are earmarked for those. With that, I'm going to conclude my report and allow the public hearing if there's any public comments that are to be addressed.
There no, oh, no, it's fine. No, it's good. We got to check that. We don't have any, now I need to open the public hearing, is that right? Or no?
That's right.
Okay, and so open the public hearing. Any cards on the side? With that, I will close the public hearing. Any questions for Eric? No? Seeing that, I'll take a motion.
I move that we receive and file the annual report concerning the Mitigation Fee Act for fiscal year 2016-17 dated December 19, 2017, which is on file with the city clerk.
Motion by Doncheck, second by Ward. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Eric.
It's longer to sing the song.
30 years old has never looked so good.
Thank you, sir.
And the next public hearing relates to billing for the 2017 weed abatement program.
That is a good-looking jacket, my friend.
Thank you very much.
Look at that.
I think there needs to be a close-up.
Bring out the new uniform.
I'm scared of you now. You've got.
You know, that will really go with epaulets, you know.
There you go. There's the close-up right there.
Oh, good.
That looks good. Can we get a few of those jackets? I'll pay for mine. That's very stylish. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, good evening, Council. Abatement, the Code Compliance Manager. I come to you tonight to conclude the 2017 weed abatement program by asking that you allow our weed abatement contractor to bill the amounts indicated in the attachments identified as the weed abatement report. This year we cleared 24 private lots, 55 city-owned lots, and at this time we're asking for, in addition to the billing to commence, that you approve the weed abatement report and also waive the city's notification costs for the compliant property owners.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions at all for Adam? We need to have it. No questions for Adam? Okay, great. Let's open the public hearing. With that, any cards? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. With that, I will hear a motion.
I move that we accept staff's recommendation, which is to, 1, waive the city's notification costs for the compliant property owners, 2, approve the weed abatement report, and 3, authorize the weed abatement contract administrator to bill the amounts indicated in the report to the appropriate property owners.
Second.
Motion by Doncheck, second by Schwartz. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. You do look good in that jacket, by the way.
Next is a report from the Public Works Director concerning an update on the San Clemente Summer Trolley Program.
Good evening, Mayor Brown.
I absolutely retract my comments to Adam and mean it. This whole harassment thing's going on out there. Adam, I have no opinion about you whatsoever. Merry Christmas. Have a good night.
I saw him try to
There we go.
pinch your butt.
Good evening, Mayor Brown and members of the council. Tom Vonnegut, Public Works Director. I'm here to give you a brief update on the summer trolley program. I don't have a PowerPoint. I do have some slides for background material if we need to go there. And I'll just make a couple, highlight a few points from the report that you have before you. First of all, as you already are aware, because we've been updating you, the trolley was wildly successful this past summer. We greatly exceeded our projections, and the report has details on that, and we can talk more about that if that's your pleasure. Also, I noted to you to inform you that OCTA, I believe in January, and Councilwoman Donchak could fill you in more if you want more information. The board will be considering potentially issuing another Project V call, which is providing funding for these local community circulators. And so not long ago, OCTA staff requested letters of interest from cities to gauge how much desire there might be to potentially do such a call. And at the city manager's direction, we penned a letter which is included in your report expressing our interest in that with some potential options, noting of course that it would be your council direction and further consideration to let us know which way you wanted us to go if it was your desire to expand or modify our current service. So that's in there, and we can talk more about that and some of the potential options. Also, at your request, we've provided you some information to help the thought process about the potential for advertising, and so there's an attachment that depicts what spaces might be available in the interior of the trolleys. And then finally, we have been getting some requests from parties to charter or otherwise rent the trolleys, and if it's your council direction to start pursuing that more earnestly, I've provided some basic initial thoughts on what that program would look like. But as I noted in the report, probably the first step should be, let's figure out if you have a desire to change up our service routes or levels, and figure out after that what might be left to actually have available for the public. And with that, my final point, I just do want to point out that you did receive, in advance of the meeting, an email from Susan Genrich, the general manager of the outlets, or hopefully you did see that, and she had a request for a modification on the signage, the verbiage on the trolley on the back rear quarter panels where we have 4 major destinations, and her request was to change the Shore Cliffs portion to outlets since that's where the stop is, and I wanted to highlight that we received that communication. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and receive direction that you might want to give to staff.
Steve?
Thank you.
This was your item, so it's
baby,
probably,
yeah. So a couple things I'd like to throw in there, and one is on I think she's right that maybe the outlets should be there. Maybe we can have the outlets pick up the cost to redo it, because it identifies where the main stops are, and we do want to push them to park there. So the whole idea to have it pick up there was in conjunction with the fact we had all that available parking there, as well as to not have them look to pick up where the kids are getting in and out of school and that kind of stuff. So I would suggest that. And on the advertising, the concept was to help fund expanding the project. So if there's more Measure V money, that would be good too. My personal preference on the advertising to test it out would not be overkill. I don't want to have a trolley going around that's basically a moving billboard, but I would like to suggest maybe just the rear view, the B and C location that we have in our book as a trial balloon to see if, and we can designate that has to be in the colors of the trolley. We can designate the design review committee has to sign off and approve all the artwork to make it blend in but also give a value, and it has to be local business, because my idea was to advertise local business on the trolley that they can use to get there.
Where would the conditions be made up of who can advertise? Where would that be decided?
That would be decided either from here or the design review committee, and we would sign off on it.
anyone that's not in good standing with the city
I
or
agree.
that's in a lawsuit with us, I think should not be able to advertise on city property.
Before we get too far in the discussions, do we have any cards on this item? I just want to make sure. Don, you do have a card. Nothing, okay. Do we want to hear from the public before we get deep into the discussions?
Sure,
Okay,
I'm up
let's
for that.
hear from Don, if that's okay.
Sure. He's wearing his badge, too.
Welcome, Don Brown.
Don Brown, citizen of San Clemente, and on the Planning Commission, Transportation Commission, and also on the Traffic Task Force when we started the Trolley, and helped start doing the grant writing and seeing we could ask, the Friends of San Clemente to contribute, which they did for $10,000. And as we go forward to the next step, I would recommend to the council for guidance to staff that we look at connectivity and look at more of a lateral expansion to the system, and maybe possibly connect with Dana Point. We can do the last mile. They already go to Beach Road, so it's another mile from them to go to Camino Capistrano. That's where they go right now, and did last summer. I would suggest you look in that direction or some way for staff. In addition, I would ask you to have staff look at a 3- and 5-year plan, just like Laguna Beach has gradually expanded there. They have 2 different routes now. Dana Point actually has a harbor route and a regular route. And so if we need to keep this visitor serving, if we start running this too far down South El Camino out into the neighborhoods, I don't think we're going to get the ridership yet. Or the same way we start lofting into Talega right now. I think that's 3 to 5 years out. So I just wanted to come here tonight to make sure that the experience we had as we grew this thing through the Traffic Task Force, that for guidance going forward to staff to look at that extra lateral connectivity up and down the coast. And that's all I wanted to say tonight, along with the 3 to 5 year type plan. Maybe we can get that consultant back that helped us in the Traffic Task Force when we built this thing. He was really good. He's done this before. I forget his name, Lori or Tim. I remember we were all on it together. But the gentleman, yeah, Tom Vonnegut knows it all. And let's grow this thing. Let's like we did when we first started this thing. Crawl, learn to stand up, then walk, then we'll run with it. And so that's kind of the points I wanted to make to the council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate your time. Kathy, if you'd like to continue, I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just want to make sure we heard from the public first.
Just with what we were talking about with the advertising, I just want to make sure that there's some conditions that, I'm not against having it, because there's certain things going on in the city, I don't want to open it up to where anyone can advertise on it. I want some conditions, because it is city property.
I'm wondering, we pay to have our recreation programs advertised. I'm wondering if we start with our own programming as an advertisement for Fun on the Run, or for our swimming hours, or for City of San Clemente. That's entirely appropriate. Pushing our rec programs. It necessarily isn't revenue generating, but by the same token, our programs are in some way help us break even in our programs, and it fits within the spirit of that. It's just a thought.
Yeah, and what I would suggest is we got 2 spots there in the back, and again, I don't want to make this a traveling show, so maybe one would be the city putting their message in there, and then one we would allow for a local business, and we could create. Again, I think the Design Review Committee should be responsible to review any advertising, and we can just say carte blanche. It's the committee's choice whether they allow it or not, and it's just by what that is. But that will allow 2 things. It's not just to raise fresh revenue to spend to do an expansion, but it also gives an opportunity to our local businesses to talk to the visitors that are riding on it about the business. So we're giving an avenue to our local businesses to promote themselves, which is what a city is supposed to do to help promote business.
I wanted to, I'm open to having this explored. I very much like the idea of considering our own activities first and also a map of the city, because I've had a lot of people wonder, you know, typically on any public transportation, there's kind of, this is where the stops are on the route, on the inside, on the, that you can look at. But I'd also like to point out, wherever this goes to be as a next step, San Clemente Journal put together a map last year that they gave out, and the advertising space went like that. Everybody wanted to be part of the trolley. And so how we price this great space is also going to be an important consideration for staff to consider from a policy point of view.
It would be interesting to prioritize businesses that are located next to the stops along the route. For example, La Siesta, Rite Aid, Ellie's Table, and Kelowna Cafe anymore. You know, the outlet mall
to activate this, the route,
the Fisherman's, you know. And to your point, I mean, you could put on that backspace like this trolley is proudly sponsored by business, not like a whole thing dedicated, but could have a series of businesses that, you know, say that they support the trolley in whatever fashion we say, you know. I love the map idea. That's one thing that is interesting, because the app is cool,
right? But
there's nothing inside the trolley that that shows you like what the.
Don't we still have the fold maps that we? I knew they were distributed.
No, that's what I'm saying. San Clemente Journal underwrote those this first season.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was at staff's direction,
or if they. Were they still in the trolleys
they,
being handed out? Oh.
And they went like hotcakes, and also the advertisers were very easy to find according to people.
But we can always take control of that as far as through a contract, and they can get paid for their services, but we can make additional revenue on the advertising in that too. I'm just looking for ways that we can, because I definitely want to do a vertical expansion. That's the number one goal for me, is to tie in with Data Point. I think that's our first, that we're so close to being able to do it, and it allows people to go at the harbor and come down to the beach. So, and it allows our locals to go up to, you know, for whale
San Juan or Dana Point or. Tom, didn't La Habra just have a system that they decided not to continue with? Was it La Habra? What city was it?
It was, okay.
So they have some trolleys on hand that they're not using, is that right?
I don't
In
know.
Westminster's more like vans, and Mission Viejo might have some coming available.
It's an interesting idea that we could, and to, you know, to the credit of this, it is interesting to see about introducing other routes. Like, for example, that Key route is terrific with those three, and we don't want to mess with that. But if we had trolleys that looked almost a little differently, that would do, you know, maybe that Dana Point connector, and then maybe that one did a circulation up to Talega, we could introduce other things and see how successful they are incrementally. And if there's other cities that have these, you know, these, I'm sure a lot of the expenses, you know, I guess probably the operation of it is probably the biggest expense, but we could potentially introduce these concepts sooner based on the opportunity. I am intrigued by the Dana Point connection. There were a lot of people that were calling for that, and also about, you know, connecting up into the hills and coming back around. But, you know, this thing, it exceeded my expectations by, you know, 3 to 4 times what I thought it would be. And so I'm grateful we added Thursday, you know. And then also part of this was adding additional days and times when we can operate the trolley. Did you think it's sustainable to add additional days to be able to retain those ridership numbers?
It seems like for the summer period, we already did 4 out of the 7 days of the week between Memorial Day and at least through Labor Day, and then we were doing weekends through September. So I think it's certainly there to pick up 3 more days and just add service, and that's something, as I mentioned in the report, anything that doesn't involve us having to go get more vehicles are things that we could do. Assuming we get funding from somewhere, we can just run the trolleys more frequently, whether it's longer hours on the days we operate or adding days. And so certainly through the summer period, we have heard some feedback about run it all year round on weekends. That'll be a little bit more of, you know, we would probably expect, except for some peaky things like the events we had downtown, that maybe we wouldn't get such great ridership. But daily service in the summer is something that we heard about and could be done fairly easily. with funding and probably would still have pretty high boarding numbers. Did that answer your question?
It does. What do you anticipate? Because probably the biggest revenue generating item is the ability to use these for special events and rentals, because it is an interesting asset. I mean, are there other agencies that are currently doing that, and what do they, generate in terms of revenue?
We didn't cast a very wide, we just looked at our South County, and I mentioned just our neighboring cities. Dana Point and San Juan don't charter their trolleys or rent them out or make them available to. Laguna Beach does. It's a rather, in my opinion, modest fee. They have that on their website. It might be a couple $100s an hour, but they are reviewing that for a number of issues, which may include how much they charge, whether they want to do it. I did a cursory review of other cities throughout the country that do operate trolleys. Some offer them for charter, and that's where I got some of these ideas about program parameters. And one of the things we would consider, I certainly recommend that you consider, is, well, the cost to do that. There is time involved to basically run a transit service, a charter service, and then what costs are we going to recapture? Do you want to recapture enough to break even, or actually spin off a little bit of funds to help the whole program in general? And if you start doing that, the costs do start adding up, because it's the drivers, it's the fuel, it's the depreciation, it's the staff time to administer it, and it's sort of that add-on component. And I don't know where we would land on that, but it would be more than probably a couple $100s an hour.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to offer the charter up unless there was a positive cash flow to the city that would help support what we're giving for free already, and to expand on that. I think my number one goal would be with the trolley is to hook up with the Dana Point. That would be the first thing I'd like to figure out how we can do. And then also look at what kind of structure it would be and take to do allowing for private function rental on off days. And then, as I said before, I would like to come up, like to give direction to at least come up with some advertising, minimalize advertising promotion, and what we can generate in revenue from that. So that's where I would like to, try.
Kathy?
Can I clarify? Are you asking us tonight to tell you what we want out of the 4 that's possibly going to be studied, the letter that we sent to OCTA?
So those were 4 examples, and the short answer to your question is I am looking for whatever direction you want to give staff in terms of what we should be starting to look at to come up with potential service changes. So, and again, I just reiterate, we don't know if the board will do a project fee call, but they may. And everything will be, we will need outside funding, I suspect, unless, you want to supply more than what the Air Quality Fund has to offer and the cost of the program. So I just need to have time to start thoughtfully evaluating that and come up with some more accurate costs in anticipation of potentially requesting grant funds and submitting an application to OCTA, because if it does get approved for a call, my guess is it'll be a fairly short trigger. So if there is a desire, for example, to expand and try and do something to connect to Dana Point, probably I would actually maybe ask for an appropriation, and I would probably have Dan Boyle Consultants, that was the consultant, and we have some good information from when we evaluated this, but we would really want to take a good look because we'll have to present detail to OCTA anyway. If it's a matter of just adding, like I said, adding more service time, so going from weekends to 7 days a week in summer, or adding weekends throughout the year, all that is money to my contractor to supply drivers. I have the vehicles already and they're set up. That's easy. I don't need a consultant to do that. So, or if there's desire to look at advertising, I'm just looking for direction so we know what we should be working on in anticipation of a grant call, or looking at advertising, or a charter program, or all of the above.
Could I weigh in with some OCTA? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. I wasn't done, but go ahead. No, I'll let you cut in. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
All right, let me just real quick.
You guys figure it out.
No, just real quick.
Kathy, go ahead.
I just was asking a question first. I too want to connect. That's what everyone says. But we also, and I will speak for Chris Ham, who's not here, this wasn't supposed to be just visitor serving. It was supposed to be also resident. And that's why we got it started also. So I still want part of El Camino Real, it to go further south I don't know what point that would be, that maybe the consultant can figure that out, but we have hotels and things down a little bit further. It's not all the way to the end. But I hear from residents all the time, they are so excited about the trolley, and then they're like, it doesn't come down El Camino, so we can't jump on it to go where we want. So I think we would get more ridership if we did go a little bit further down, and I'll leave that up to a consultant to figure out how that would work. But I don't want to give that up where the residents are getting part of this.
And I agree. Let's not sacrifice one for the other. I think Dana Point connection would be good for our residents. That allows them to go north into the harbor.
And to Laguna.
Into Laguna. So
Right.
I mean, I think that's a big benefit to our residents. And then, yes, I would love to catch some of the south direction as much as we can expand and afford within the limitations that we have as to the timing and the number of vehicles we're going and the routes, and that's the consultant would give us some numbers on that.
Lori, did you have a comment?
From an OCTA point of view, there probably will be a call for projects in January, and things that are shelf-ready will be looked at more favorably than things that are not. So, for example, option 2, increasing the summer service from weekend to daily service. To Tom's point, we could accomplish that, and it is building from success, and it's a route that's a proven performer. So in my view, that's something that we should certainly put forward to OCTA. These other ideas that would require additional fleet, we do know that branding is very important, and that the branding design of our trolleys is very distinctive, and so if we're going to take someone else's rolling stock, we probably want to build in the time to make sure it is repainted. Yeah, and we don't want the Westminster vans with the tinted windows, for example. So that's what they had, yeah, for different reasons. So what I would suggest is that, and also for the connection to the Dana Point, there is a lot of interest in being regional serving, and County Supervisor Bartlett has said over and over again that we're kind of the outlier in the trolley system. So that we could probably put forth for number 2 and number 3, and have a good chance at getting a win on that, because our ridership numbers are just so very strong, and we lost bus service last year. And so and the LIFT program didn't quite achieve expectations. So I'd recommend we take these 4 and put them in priority, or eliminate what we don't want. And as to the South El Camino Real corridor, there was a lot of interest in pushing it down to T Street as the next leg. But what's different about that than our current route is we're going through neighborhoods then. And so we'd really want to be sensitive, because it would probably be Barcelona. Yeah. And so we'd really want to take the temperature of the community before we make those changes.
So you really think that one street is the ideal street?
I just know that T Street as a destination, the beach, was considered a very popular addition to the system. And I don't know how you get there. Maybe you go down to Esplanade and come back. I don't know what you do, but
right.
Yeah.
That might be more reasonable than Barcelona.
I think at the very least, I think you're right. I think we do need to warm up and set up the connector to Dana Point, and then the increase of the service. I would love to get the consultant started right now on modeling how is it best to grow this system. You know, not from the existing footprint and obviously the Dana Point connector, but for example, one of the things I suspect has been so valuable about the trolleys is the fact that it moves up and downhill that people don't necessarily like to walk very much is I think what has created a lot of vitality there. When you're talking about El Camino Real, it's straight, it's bikeable, so will you get the same vitality as going up and down as it is going down ECR? Well, if they don't want to drive, but that's a fact pattern that our consultant can figure out for us. At the very least, I think if we provide direction on 2 and 3, that we should provide, to Don's point, some modeling on how to grow this system. If we reach these benchmarks at each component and is successful, how can we grow the system to really provide an amenity that really is great for this town and can, bring it together?
So what we're trying to say is possibly 2 and 3 would be the ones to focus on initially now with your consultant, with keeping an eye on and in communication with him regarding down the road, as we looking at 2, 3, 4 years, expanding south. How do we expand maybe next season down south?
Yeah, so I think 2 and 3 is baked for, I mean, this is, if we're going to do something for Project V coming up, it's going to be those 2 projects, because anything more would be difficult to attain.
Bucks, and so let's see. But let's see how.
So we knocked down 2 and 3, but we're bringing the consultant on board, not only validate those 2, but also to help us model out,
the other 1 and 4.
I would just like to clarify, number 3 has 2 thoughts in there. It's the same idea as to connect with Dana Point. We did do, in the study that set up our current trolley program, we did look at a few other alternatives, one including extending all the way to the south end of town to the Trestles parking lot, and then going up to Palisades where Dana Point ends, and that required tripling the number of vehicles that we currently have. What's baked into this potential alternative is in my informal coordination with Dana Point staff, and they are also looking at potential alternatives. There was an idea, and it depends on them, is if we met halfway basically, as described here, and they would come from Palisades down and somehow turn around by the DMV somewhere and go back, and we come up and turn around there. We might be able to pull that off with 3 vehicles and some extra cost to really work on the trolley timing to keep them spaced appropriately. Therefore, it minimizes the burden to each system where we may not have to add vehicles, but we meet up. I don't know if they're going to pursue that, but if not, I already know from our past consultant study that we'll need extra vehicles because of the time it takes to go all the way up to Palisades. We won't meet the 15-minute headway, which is pretty important for success.
But would you, in that situation, what I would see is that you would have the 3 in their current route, and then you would have 1 that would just make that trip back and forth up ECR maybe, right? Is that
That is a potential we discussed too, is that, and then as was mentioned before, we keep our core route running on the core route. Dana Point keeps its route, and then potentially we jointly do a connector. It does have the downside of requiring an extra transfer, if you will, because you're making 1 transfer at North Beach to get on a connector vehicle, then you have to get off that vehicle again to get onto a Dana Point one. Those schedules won't be coordinated, as opposed to if we just come meet in the middle, or we go up there or they come down here, it's a 1 transfer like it is now between San Juan and Dana Point Laguna. So
option
but there is that option too.
Option number 2 sounded better, because one of the things I think that would rob the trolley of its vitality is every trolley running down ECR and turning around by the DMV, then going back up the outlet mall is, you may have a very small percentage that is wanting to go to Dana Point, and everyone's going to be forced to take that trip to drop you off. I'd hate to interrupt our existing routes, and so maybe that's what a consultant can tell us about what the impact would be, because if I was on the trolley and I was in North Beach, I'm like, great, I got to go to the DMV before we head up to the outlet mall. It might take a lot of the fun out of it, frankly. So if you had a single connector, one that would run to Dana Point and back just constantly between those 2 cities, that would seem to be the best solution, from North Beach to Dana Point and just back and forth. Even a different color or a hybrid between the 2,
Or work it into the system so that a certain time, morning, noon, and then towards the end, you've got a couple runs that go there. In other words, just work it. You don't have to have the same run for all the vehicles. You can just expand. And again, the consultant will tell us how this works. But you can expand the Dana Point route at times during the day, and there would be like a little sign on it saying, to show the times that it would go to Dana Point.
Are we consulting with, which city commission are we consulting with? Is it BPNR? Who is it? Is it Planning Commission? Who would be the body who would kind of chew on this?
I don't recall that we went, I think we always worked, originally it was through the Mobility Task Force, which was a limited term ad hoc committee, and then those recommendations flowed. We may have had the design review subcommittee involved for certain aspects related to when we got into the design.
Also talked about route and stops.
That's true. I just don't remember if that had a planning commission stop. Perhaps Commissioner Brown could help me out.
Don, you remember that coming before planning commission?
I don't recall.
I would be interested to see if the planning commission can chew on this question. Once the consultants come back, it would be interesting to bring that through planning commission and have them maybe look at, the functionality for it. Yeah. And that fast?
But this gets back to the shelf-ready versus, so the first, the one where you're just adding more days, that should probably be our first ask. That we want our existing route, but we want it daily during the summer, and we want funding for that. And then
The expansion to Dana Point.
the expansion to Dana Point, if that's served up as a regional, maybe there's an idea to get extra time to look at it.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of political pressure that we can take advantage of to connect to Dana Point.
I have no doubt with that. I don't want to compromise the existing route. So maybe we just have the consultant focus on that and, figure out a way to make Dana Point a vital connection option without compromising the existing success of our route. Maybe what we do is we send a planning commission as the future of the system and then start to have those long-range.
3 to 5 year plan.
The long-range planning discussions with the consultant on board. Because, it's fun to have this review, but ultimately, I think it would be nice to tell the residents when they say, I want to go to South San Clemente, is to say, that's year 2, here's when it's going to happen, right? And because right now, it's like, well, it's kind of amorphous, and, it depends on how successful it is.
Well, and the way to probably make we had Measure V and Project V tonight. The Project V process work is we apply for it, but say we don't anticipate we go for what we want for next summer, and then for the Dana Point Connector, we apply for it, but we ask for the funds at a later date. We say we don't expect to need the funds until we have it sorted out, both from the equipment need and the route logistics. So we're asking for it as part of, because the asks only come up every 2 to 3.
Plus, we'll have to have some agreement with Dana Point on this, right?
Yeah, so, but that sounds like a, yeah.
Mayor.
Yeah. I mean, well, yes, I'm sorry, Ken.
Can we talk about that agreement with Dana Point? My understanding was Dana Point came down on PCH and stopped, and we were going to meet them there. When did this come in where it's up in Palisades?
So my coordination has been obviously informal because I can't commit to anything with my counterpart at Dana Point, and we talked about options, and he was working with his city manager. So the idea of a separate connector came up that we would jointly go in on and keep our core routes, as I mentioned, and then the idea about sort of meeting in the middle, if you will, and that was the discussion. And then I was also told that because of their resident input, they were getting requests to serve the Sprouts Shopping Center, which is right on our northern border, and that they were looking at potential to expanding a route or a new route or something to somehow serve that area.
So my concern is they're looking to expand, and they're asking us to come up higher, where our connector before was just to go down PCH and meet them. That was a much easier ask and a much easier connector.
And I want to be clear, they didn't ask us to, that's just, they said, we're considering this. They didn't say, you come up here. They just said, we've got a couple things we're looking at, but it was very fluid too, and they have a general letter of interest, and they're going through whatever analysis.
So let's just direct that a conversation take place, and because you're right, and the original idea also was Ritz-Carlton and, a PCH, and it was going to be that kind of get to the San Clemente Beach experience.
So I'm concerned that it's, do a connection to Dana Point, but I am concerned about the expanded route that it's going to take away from other things we might try and do.
No, and I agree. I think it makes sense for us to expand north up just on PCH.
And then,
and they should be able to make it easy, where there's a couple places along there to connect. So we should ask them to look at that.
I wanted to talk about the rental program. I have a lot of enthusiasm for this as an off-season tool. And, you were talking about when the trolley might or might not be available for private use. So what I am thinking with this is we direct staff to work with Planning Commission and come up with some sort of an off-season trolley program along the lines that Tom proposes an attachment for. The exception being I'd like to offer it for the trolleys available for longer than just a couple of hours, because Boys and Girls Club might want to do something to do with a camp, or football might want to do something with homecoming. Yeah, because one of the things I sparked to, Steve, that you said is that one of the spirit of the trolley was to get cars off the road and alleviate parking. So if that can be, or even weddings, we're hearing about valet parking issues. Wouldn't it be great if the trolley could pick up the guests and move them from?
But it has to pay for you know.
It needs
we
to be
require
revenue
everything else-
positive. Yes, it needs to be revenue positive. And in fact, I would even say revenue positive with the thought that the money that is generated goes toward alleviating parking issues in San Clemente, so that it's not, we're just filling our coffers, we're actually solving transportation.
Go back to the trolley system and expand it, so.
There you go, that's, yeah, but yeah, something to get cars off the
All
road.
right, so do we have clear direction here? I just want to make sure we're aggregating it correctly.
So let me take a
Could
crack
you
at it.
summarize what you've heard? That would be
Yes,
best.
I will do that, going in reverse order. So most recently, with regard to a potential rental or chartering program, the direction would be for staff to work with Planning Commission. We'll figure out what that process looks like to start fleshing out a program, generally following the parameters in your attachment D report, but not necessarily limiting the trolley just to 2 hours, and that certainly wasn't our intent. And then also, as we start fleshing that out, to arrive or start developing what a proposed rental charge would be that is revenue positive, with the extra money spinning off either into supporting the trolley in general or parking in general. So that was one item.
And it's off-season.
Off-season when the trolley's
It's
not
only
in
an
use,
off-season
right,
program.
Off-season, okay. And then,
Joanne, by the way, these will probably end up being the motions, so we should pay pretty close. All right, good.
so I'm going to think carefully. With regard to advertising, I believe I heard a general direction to explore a trial program using the spaces in the rear ceiling of the trolley, spaces B and C identified in the report, and ideas on how to do that, and we'll work to flesh that out, whether it's a sponsored by or a single ad or one that's a business oriented and one that is a sort of a city promotional for whatever program we decide, and come back with some more detail on that. So it'll be the second one. And then with regard to possible service expansions, that we would focus first on options 2 and 3. Options 2 being an increase of the summer service from weekend to daily service, and we can fairly readily line that out in anticipation of being prepared for a Project V call in January if that does happen. And then also a focus on option 3, some connection to Dana Point. And I believe the latest discussion was keep it on the PCH corridor, whether that's going up to the DMV shopping center at the north end of town or possibly running up to Palisades where Dana Point currently ends. And we probably, so that's the third direction. And I'll add, to do that, I may need some consultant assistance, and we'll probably ask for a supplemental appropriation, and I'll work out a scope later with our consultant, but I think for a reasonable fee, probably somewhere under $25,000. That's my guesstimate. We could do that, but I'd need to have a direction on a supplemental from the Air Quality Fund. Believe that's, have I captured it?
I would just like to add as the third option that we do look at expanding the route, or have the consultant educate us on what would be involved in expanding the route down the South El Camino Real corridor. I think this exists. I think it was done in his original analysis, but it would be good to refresh our memories.
We can do a refresh, and that should be a nominal effort because we do have a lot of good work that's not that old. So we will also then, I'll add that direction to look at a southward expansion as well.
How does that sound?
Great.
Joanne, did you get that? Does that sound pretty clear?
Get it in the morning.
All right, so luckily we videotaped these, so our minds are slipping.
I move Tom's motion.
I second.
All right, so we have a motion to move Tom's motion. It's heretofore called Tom's motion, and that's a motion by Donchek, second by Schwartz. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, Tom.
Great, thank you.
Oral Communications, Part 2. I don't have any cards.
No cards. Anybody to speak on this item?
All you people out there.
Chief. All right.
City Manager,
Nothing.
City Attorney,
Nothing more tonight, thank you.
consideration of appointing a city representative to the Community Engagement Panel.
So I announced my resignation from this body this past year, and looking for someone to fill in. And I believe, I don't think there was any interest, but Councilman Schwartz, is there any interest on your part on this one?
But it depends on
So here's how the Song's Community Engagement Panel, because there's, got 3 members here present, different things. Community Engagement Panel meets quarterly. It's to discuss the San Onofre decommissioning project. We've been through a lot of the thick on this one already. Right now it is pretty related to the ongoing storage questions, as well as the consolidated interim storage push and other items that would help. Really, I mean, the most important thing is getting the waste out of here at this point. And so that's really the onus behind being seated on this panel. Frankly, I'm open to anybody who wants to take this assignment. I've been able to do it for 4 years, but it meets quarterly, and it's Oceanside, San Juan, wherever that may be. And so, anyone who'd like to step up and do that, I'm open to it.
And can I clarify, the purpose of this panel was mainly to let the public be heard and to get their questions answered?
I don't have the charter in front of me, but primarily it was a way of engaging with the public, with elected officials, with environmental organizations, with public safety organizations, in a way of having a way to address question and answers for the public to engage, and for San Onofre to engage along with elected officials and hear these items. That is really the purpose. Initially, it was meeting very often because the workload was very significant. Now it continues to be informational and informational. It continues to provide information, but the meetings are not as frequent, and it's regarding more advanced stages of the plant being decommissioned, the casks going into dry storage from wet storage. And so it's just taking on a different approach here, but it's still important. It still have representation. There are 3 cities currently represented. It's 4 cities, excuse me, Dana Point, San Juan, San Clemente, and Oceanside are currently seated with representatives on there, with the school district and a number of other agencies.
Well, if no one else wants it, I could fill the spot, and we would need another alternate, because my schedule sometimes gets screwy. But yeah, I would step up to the plate.
And before, thank you for doing that. I just want to clarify, because I was thinking about this. You were our representative because at the time you were mayor, and they wanted the mayors, and it's an extremely complicated topic and issue, and there's no space in your calendar to do it for another year. Because if it is only quarterly, the only reason I ask is I sat down with the mayor of Huntington Beach to walk them through the issue recently, because I know it's an issue I care deeply about, and I was like, wow, there's so many moving parts. Somebody just sent me an email wanting to know when the dry cast storage kicks off in December, and I was like, well, I better ask Tim, because I don't know. So my question is, because you started as mayor and you're mayor again, and it's quarters, and you were the vice chair.
I know that a lot of people are really tired of hearing from me, on that
Repetition
item.
Is a good thing.
I know, it's just the challenge is ultimately, and the reason why is because, sometimes I'm welcome to fresh perspective on the item, and that's maybe what Steve could provide on that, because it's been 6 years since Fukushima it happened, and we started this back in that process. And so, I just felt as if that's what the community was asking for, and so I was responding to that. And so, I never spelled that right, do I? So that's what I was responding to. I'm happy to serve as as an alternate to help you out, or, and to assist in any way possible. It's just, I was really responding mainly to what the community seemed like they wanted, which was probably somebody new to maybe look at it and bring a fresh perspective. That was really my thought behind it, because as much as I love the body, I really enjoyed the technical material and learning about it. Sometimes it's good to have some turnover in that regard.
I think, actually, Steve, you would enjoy it. It is very technical, but the experts that come that Edison brings, it's very, very interesting. So I think you would enjoy it. And I have to say, I would help, but with the toll road issue, if TCA is willing to do the right thing and abandon this ill-conceived project, then I would totally jump in on that issue. But at this time, I can't.
And I'm happy to serve as an alternate, especially if the meetings get problematic here.
So I guess what it is, it's me and you as my backup.
Yes, I think that would be best.
And I just wanted, before you jump in on this, I'm meeting with the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility this week about some legislation on emergency services that they want authors for in January, so that's coming.
Steve, I'm happy to work with you on those, as much as I can without violating the Brown Act.
See him.
Yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, okay, so was there a motion? You made the motion?
Steve with you as the alternate. Yeah.
Okay. Motion by Donchak, second by Ward. All those in favor? Aye. Passes 4-0. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Councilmember report.
And who's the new representative from San Juan?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh. It's not Pam.
No. We got an email, but I don't know who the new representative is. Sergio Farias? Must have been Sergio. Like I said, you know, every community benefits. The reason why I was in that tenure for a long time was a vice chair. You know, I had some responsibility. I think that's why I retained there. But Jerry Kern has been on there for a long time too. Has been very valuable in his advocacy, as you very well know. So, in some cases, it's been a benefit. But I think, you know, just like everything deserves a fresh look. So, I do appreciate that, Steve. Councilmember items.
I'll start. Laura, do you have those slides? I just want to update the public on what happened at our last TCA meeting, because I think that's the last slide. Is there one more? Go back to the map. Okay, thanks. TCA had 20 ideas. They announced at this last meeting that 13 have now been eliminated. They will not continue to study those. So there's 7 ideas going forward. And if you look down on this one list that Laura has up, 9 through 18 is what they're still going to look at. It includes 4 out of the 7 are possible ways to connect the toll road to the 5. Things like opening the toll roads and adding dynamic pricing, they said would provide limited benefits. They weren't interested in looking for that. TCA staff will continue at this point to work with Caltrans on their project initiation process, which is anticipated to be complete in 2018. No date on when that will be, but expected, I think. I'm looking for it in the early first quarter. I'm not sure. What that project initiation document does is it formally evaluates the technical feasibility of any of these remaining 7 ideas and determines which ones will go forward into the formal EIR process, and that process will take 4 to 5 years. Not really interested in the 4 to 5 year process at that point, only interested in what's going forward. But I want the public to know that this has been formally announced and this is their plan. I'd like the entire presentation for the, Laura did 3 slides on this, but the entire presentation to be on our website. However, their other presentation they made was just a composite of the poll they did, and I wanted to ask, is the poll on our website, the actual poll? I think the poll should be on, but the full poll, not the one that they showed at the meeting, which just glanced over some items. So that's all. I wanted the public to be aware of that. Because all of this idea, if we're studying 20 ideas, here's their timeline. You can see in 2017, they have it split in 6 months. They're saying that we're here between the screening process, which obviously they just screened it, and now they're going to do their project study report, which is the project initiation document that they need to start with Caltrans to begin this project. So that's where they're at. No idea on this when that comes out. So we'll definitely be following that. But I wanted to announce that. We didn't do a toll road update at this meeting, so I'm going to do that here and ask that to be on our website.
Thank you, Kathy. Good work. Lori?
And we do need to put toll road back on the agenda as a, I'm building off of Kathy's, at OCTA, at the board meeting this week, the transportation corridor agencies in coordination with the OCTA and the Caltrans has been finalizing the environmental phase of a proposed project to construct a tolled connector between State Route 241 and the 91 express lanes. Technical studies indicate the proposed project could increase traffic congestion for drivers on the State Route 91 and the general purpose lanes and the 91 express lanes during the evening commute. And given these regional mobility issues, it was recommended and it passed with a vote of 10-3-4 to direct staff to request that the TCA defer all work on the 241-91 Express Lanes connector, given the regional mobility impacts, and then also to direct staff to work with the RCTC, which is the Riverside County Transportation Commission, and Caltrans to evaluate opportunities to advance State Route 91 congestion relief projects. So this basically has put the North Connector project on hold and elevated the planning to OCTA and RCTC with Caltrans, of course.
And then there's been the public has brought a lot of concern in regarding our canyons, transient camping, and the current fire hazard that we are in. And I just wanted to let the public know that for quite a while now, we have been working on and are working on emergency ordinance that would give more strength and capabilities to our deputies to clear out canyons when we are in a red flag period, and that it is a fire hazard. And so that we are working in language now, our city attorney is working on it, that will provide the capability to respond when we're in a fire hazardous time, to clear them out of any encampments that could create a fire. So just want you to know the city is we've been hearing it, we've been working on it even before it was brought up to us, and we're hopefully getting closer to putting it together.
So you're saying during red flag warning days?
Yes.
That would be in effect? Okay.
Yeah, in other words, we're not looking to do it blanket where we're dealing with human rights and dealing with all that. What we're talking about is an emergency situation when it's been declared an emergency situation and we're in a red flag and it's a fire hazardous zone, that we clear out anything that could be considered to create and add to a potential fire.
So would that affect off trail use of motorized vehicles during red
whatever we
flag?
decide to put in it, all that stuff would be added in there, and I think it would give us a lot more capability to keep our city safe from fire.
So I'll go last. I don't have any pictures, but I wanted to thank the Chabad of San Clemente who invited the council to attend the Hanukkah lighting celebration. Not this past Sunday, the Sunday before. Councilman Schwartz was there. Mayor Pro Tem Ham was there, and it was a tremendous event, one of the best sunsets I've ever seen in San Clemente. It was incredible. Oh, it was so fun. It was so fun. The jelly donuts were legit.
And they even got us to dance.
They got us to dance. I wasn't good at it, so I stopped. But it was really a tremendous event. And so we're very grateful for the rabbi and his wife for inviting us. It's always a wonderful event. Also had a chance to visit FAM this last weekend. They had an event at the community center where they had a Christmas giveaway. It was really just a beautiful thing. It was wonderful to see all the volunteers who were working so hard. And Mary Purdue showed me around, and it was just a really wonderful, great event. And I was grateful that they did that for the residents. And it just felt the Christmas spirit, and it was just a really wonderful thing. So with that, I'll go ahead and do the adjournment. That's adjourned to the next regular council meeting that will be held on January 16, 2018 in the council chambers located at 100 Avenida Presidio, San Clemente. Closed session items will be considered at 5 p.m. and the regular business meeting will take place at 6 p.m. And just a note, the regular council meeting of January 2nd was previously canceled.
Second.
Motion by Brown, second by Schwartz. All those in favor? Aye. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Everyone have a great night.
See you tomorrow.